Alright guys, so when you click on the link, you're gonna see this, and I will highly recommend downloading individual zip files. So go ahead, right click on your project file, download that, and I'm gonna show you how to import it inside our database. Let me show you how to import the project we just downloaded. Go under your color correction and you're gonna right click, you're gonna hit import project, and you're gonna go ahead to your download folder and you're gonna select this project and you're just gonna hit open and it's gonna bring it in, and then you're gonna have to eventually relink the footage to the files that you're gonna be downloading from the G drive. And that's it.
Whoa. A lot of the times when we see Hollywood stuff, it's really shot that way too. They're using different color gels and color lights, and then in post, what a colorist is doing is like really accentuating that and then building a look that helps the story on top of it. But this is where it all starts. Color correction is the foundation to color grading. If you skip this part, you're done. Like, I don't even mean this masterclass. I mean, if you don't focus on color correction and you just want to create looks and want to have fun with it, you'll never get your desired results unless you understand this inside out. Let me just say this. If you're a colorist and you only know color correction, you don't know anything else, no bells and whistles, just color correction, you can live the rest of your life comfortably. Think about this. Unless you're working for the biggest color grading company in the world, your bread and butter as a colorist is gonna be working on the following: promos, reality TV, regional spots, documentaries, corporate videos, travel videos, wedding videos. And you can kill it at all of the above if you know color correction. I'm gonna keep saying it until you start hating me, but this is where everything starts. Everything. And you were sold on false promises. There's way too many LUT packs out there, and you try to do something on your own and you start getting somewhere, but then you look at these awesome LUTs and you look at these teasers and you're just like, you know what? There's nothing that I can do that's even gonna come close to it. And I'm telling you this because I've been there. I literally do not talk about anything that I haven't done. I'm only sharing what I've gone through. And for the longest time in my life, anytime I'll do something, it didn't matter. No matter how good it was, I just looked at, I applied a LUT to something, or not even applying a LUT to something. I would just watch a teaser and they'll go through like before and after with the LUT, and I'll just be like, okay, this is game over. Like, why am I even wasting my time? It doesn't matter what I do. It's not gonna be as good as what somebody else has done. Let me just try that. No, don't get me wrong. Like in color grading section, we're gonna be using LUTs at times. I'm not saying LUTs are bad, but what I'm saying is that this is just not the starting point. The magic bullet days and all that is cute, but you really need to get in there. And if you wanna be a colorist, just drop everything else, start from a blank canvas, and really understand and drench yourself in this world and understand what happens when you move this to here and that to there and what is happening. Try to break it down in your head. Try to watch stuff that explains what's happening, and then keep doing it until things start to click. And guys, I gotta tell you, if you gotta be great at something, you gotta put in the work. There's literally no shortcuts. What I'm here to do is focus your energy, learn from my mistakes and all the trial and errors that I've gone through, and that will eventually save you a ton of time when it comes to your career. Now let's jump into everyone's favorite question. What's the difference between color correction versus color grading? Let's get right into it.
Sports you see on TV, news, game shows, reality TV, TV docs, all that is color correction. And color grading includes movies, music videos, and commercials.
So think about it like this. You have to get your bachelor's degree before your master's. So color correction is your bachelor's and color grading is your master's. All right, I swear, I'm done talking. Let's get right into the project.
In this video, we're gonna do a quick overview of color correction project. So double click on it, open it up. This is how everything is laid out in here. You have a master folder, and under master folder, we have 5 folders: landscape, people, products, Rec 709, grayscale. each folder is going to contain 2 timelines. One is going to be start and one is going to be finished. Finished is going to be what you're going to get at the end from me. So everything is going to be graded. And then that's for your reference. But you're going to be working in start timeline. And it's going to be the same thing throughout this entire masterclass. All right, let's jump right into it. I don't know about you guys, but I can't wipe the smile off my face. Color correction is unbelievable. I love it so much because it's so underrated and it's so freaking powerful. Everything starts right here. And I'm gonna keep saying it. And you guys are gonna hate me throughout this module, but it is the reality. Anytime you're working with a director as a colorist, you just hear this, make it pop. What they're trying to say is make it look really good, make it look juicy, give it a lot of life, and just make people wanna buy into whatever it is that they're selling, whatever the story is. If it's food, make them freaking drool. They wanna eat that. Like if it's a freaking sunrise and it's a landscape shot, make them wanna go there. So there's always a story. You got to get some sort of emotion out of it. So color correction is the foundation of that. This is where it starts. In this video, I'm going to give you the simplest explanation to understand scopes. So let me just make it a little bit bigger. Let's leave it right here and look at what's happening. Okay, so let me do a couple of things really fast. I'm going to turn on my skin indicator. I'm going to make that bigger so we can see what is happening here. I'm going to turn on my histogram. Okay, we're good to go. So what we're reading here, first of all, let me just say a disclaimer. It's not that hard. When you look at the scopes, it's not hard at all. Once you understand it, once you get a hang of it, it's going to be a piece of cake. But guys, this is the roadmap. This right here is the roadmap. Anytime you're lost, this is going to put you back on track. So that's how you want to look at it, okay? This is how I set up my scopes. You guys can set it up however you like. I definitely recommend having 4 up, meaning 4 screens, because you can also go with 1 or 2 up. I like 4 up. You do you. So this is how I have it. So what we're looking at, if I were to tell the story, even without looking at the image, I will look at it like that. I will read it like that. So see right here how the blue is just, the whole blue channel is lifted, and that gets translated right here. It's lifted even in the shadows and in the highlights right here. Anything that's up top is highlights, bottom is shadows, midtones are midtones in the middle. Look at the histogram. Look at the blue, look at the green channel, look at the red channel, and how blue is kind of to the right, okay? And then same thing right here. It's kind of pushed to the right. So there's more blue than the rest. That's what it's basically telling us. It's a little bit blue biased, our entire image. So it's cooler than, and it's not properly white balanced. That's what that means. And we can also see the vector scope. So here's a pro tip when it comes to vector scopes. If you just want to get the image in the right ballpark, if you want to white balance your image, just make sure that it's not leaning toward one side. So like right now, it's all kind of, the actual meat is kind of pushed down. And it's kind of pushed down between like cyan and blue. We can see that. We need to push that up in the middle. That's the goal, okay? So as I said, the roadmap. So how can we go about it? There's so many different ways to attack this. In this video, let's talk about the key component in color correction, white balance. White balance is everything, and a proper white balance is not as easy as you think. Let's dive right in. So the first thing that I'm gonna do is, let's just go here, hit this guy right here, and use the temperature control, temperature and tint, and see if that does anything. And then we can keep creating versions, and I can keep showing you different ways to approach it. So the first one, let's just start with the easiest. So I'm gonna do this. Okay, I need to bring the blue down and bring the red up. So if we go to the right, we warm our image. If we go to the left, we cool it off. So we need more warmth, not cooling it off. So I'm gonna go to the right and look what's happening. So now let me turn it off and on and just watch what just happened. So focus right here and see how we start to balance it out. Look at my red, my green. There's still a little bit, green is a little bit, dominant right here now that our blues are in control. And you can see that here too. Just focus right here. And the green is peeking out a little bit. But overall, we're getting much better. Look at before, look at after. So anytime you see concentrated color in your highlights or in your shadows, you are on the right track. You're balancing your shot. And now look at right here in the vector scope, how it's coming up in the middle. We're off to a good start. Same thing right here. Just look. This before, after. So this did a pretty good job, okay? Now what I'm gonna do is to tackle this problem where the green is a little bit higher. I'm just gonna add a little bit of magenta. So tint is between magenta and green. If I go to the left, I add green. If I go to the right, I add magenta. So what I'm gonna do is just add a little bit of magenta and look what's gonna happen. I just added a little bit of magenta and it brought up my red and it brought up my blue and it just balanced everything out. And now we're looking better. So now that's even better. Okay, so this is before, this is after. So that was one way to do it. Save this version. And now I'm gonna show you a different way to do it. This time I'm gonna do it using my offset. So offset is this fourth wheel that's to the right here, okay? And it's really simple to understand. Offset will probably be the best option here, and let me tell you why. Because look at what is happening here. Our blue channel is lifted. The whole thing is lifted, okay? It's not like it's on the same level in the shadows and then the blues are lifted. The whole thing is lifted, and that's where offset comes into play, because we can just literally take this channel and bring the whole thing down to match it with what's happening here. And let me show you what I mean. So to reduce blue, what do we have to do? We have to go in the opposite direction to blue. So if the blue is right here and we want to reduce it, we're going to grab this and we're going to go to the left, and look what's happening. So what I was doing is I started going just toward the blue, and then I started paying attention to the top, what was happening right here. And paying attention to the top, I pretty much took care of that, but then my blue is now lower than my green and my red. So it's adding a bit of red in the shadows because the reds are lifted now. So, you know, same thing. We can play that. We can do that dance. If I do this, now I can balance it. So now you can see that, you know, my blacks are balanced, but then there's a tiny bit of blue up top. But if we want to actually balance it, then what we can do is we can just go into our gain, because we want to make the change. The problem child is, you know, the highlights, nothing else. Everything else will fall into place if we take care of the highlights. So what we need to do is I'm going to go into my gain and I'm going to continue the same practice as this to balance out, to level out my highlights. So this is what I'm going to do. And there you go. And guys, I always tell you, you know this, that in color grading, a little goes a long way. Just tiny changes go a long, long way. So that's why you just have to be very, very gentle. Like some people, you know, just push it because they see all the space on the wheel. So they just want to maximize it. Somehow they think that's better. Little is more. That's just the concept. Little is more in color grading. And this is the little nuance that you see a commercial and it looks so good. I mean, seriously, this is how it was shot. And if we just did this and if we turn it in right here with one node already, because it was shot with red, it just looks great. I mean, it looks solid. Like, look at it. It's shot well. I mean, let's just play it through. Everything is under control. I mean, it's looking good. So this just happened with one node by just doing a proper balance. Now let's look at another way to do it Okay, so this time we're gonna use printer lights, and this is the OG method, you know, very popular back in the day, and it's still very powerful and it's very precise. So if I wanna take out my blue right here and bring it down to balance out the highlights, I will just do this. So it's on your keyboard. The numeric keys turn into your hotkeys for printer lights. So 4 would be your red minus, 7 would be your red plus, 5 would be your green minus, and 8 would be your green plus, 6 will be your blue minus, and 9 will be your blue plus. So if I want to bring the entire blue channel down, I'm going to hit 6 and look what's happening. And I can park it right here. Now, if I want to bring my green channel down, or actually, let's just bring our red channel up, because look at what's happening. Red is down here, red is down here, so it's just overall down. So if we just bring it up, maybe bring it down a little, something like that. So that right there, you know, so we can see what's happening. Printer lights is a quick way to kind of just get you started. It's just your process. What do you like more? What are you more comfortable with? Are you more comfortable with just punching in numbers? Are you more comfortable with having your hands on the balls and the wheels and just moving those around? Are you more comfortable with your mouse where you can just use the slider? But I'm showing you different effective ways that are used to do this. And then eventually you're just going to pick your poison. And also there's going to be times when just to tweak it and just to get in there, you have to do one extra thing to just get it there. Okay. And that's not going to happen if you only know one method and you never even heard of the second method. That's why this is kind of important. So now that we see what's happening here and where we are, it's really easy for us. So I'm in my primaries bars. And if you're looking at this, this is what you got to do. You can see what's happening. So this is our printer lights. This is what we were using, and it got us here. Now what we want to do is we want to extend our red up top and at the bottom. So the way we're going to do that is, what is bottom? Bottom is lift right here. So if I want to move this down, I'm going to go right here and I'm just going to pull this down a little bit and just look what's happening. Okay. And I'm going to leave it somewhere around here. Now I'm going to look at my top and I'm just going to go, okay, here's my red, here's my gain, and let's just raise it a little. I'm going to raise it just a bit until we flatline this and we're looking good here. We're looking great here. We're looking good here. See, we're mostly in the center. Now, the one thing that I do notice is now the lower mids are a little bit on the red side because I can see it here. Look at this. So it's a little bit on the red side in the middle. And to control that, as long as we're in the primaries bar, we can just grab that and just nudge it down a little bit. Just a little bit. And that right there. So we just did this using our printer lights. And now I'm going to show you the last method. And then after that, we're going to review all our 4 methods and just kind of get a sense for what's happening. So I'm going to create a new version, get rid of this. And this time, we're just going to do it using our OG primaries wheels. Okay. So now I'm looking at this. How can I fix it? This is how I'm going to fix it. You know, my highlights are on the blue side are just too much. So I'm just going to grab this. I'm going to go in the opposite direction and I'm going to say, you know what? This is looking better. That's okay. We're going to take care of everything else. So now let's just go and take care of the shadows, which is the lifts right here. So they're pretty lifted. And if I want to bring it down, I can just do that. And this is where my focus is, okay? So look how this is white, and everything else here is looking good. And then right here, we're looking pretty good. Now, the one thing that I'm seeing is like, you know, the green is kind of dominating the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to push that back a little. And now it's looking pretty good. Look at our white balance here and here. It's looking pretty solid. So let's just say this is our 4th method, okay? So let me do this and pull up our 4 methods and see what is really happening. This one was done using temperature and tint. This one was done using offset and some help from the primaries. This one was done using printer lights, and this version was done using primaries. And I gotta be honest with you, personally, I am split between printer lights and right here, our offset version. I've never been a fan of temperature and tint. It's okay if you're just really turning and burning and you just gotta run through a bunch of stuff, but I never really had the best luck with it. I feel like it's a cool feature. I genuinely feel like Resolve added these features for Lightroom and Lumetri users and people who are migrating from the Adobe suite. But I just genuinely think that they're still under development, you know? They're gonna get better and it's gonna be great. But as of now, I have my hesitation with these tools. So let's reset, and this is my final and my least favorite way. This is just a bonus little tip. You can use it, but I don't rely on it. I don't depend on it. Anything that has the word automatic next to it, I'm just not a super fan of it. And this little eyedropper right here, you can click on it and that's your white balance. If you find any white point, you can click on it and it will balance the image for you. So you can see that it did a pretty good job if I go before and after. So sometimes you can use this and it can put you in a ballpark, but guys, don't start off with this, please. I even feel bad showing it to you because I feel like so many of you are just gonna use and abuse this method. It's cool that it's there. Use it every now and then if you need to, but this is not gonna help you in the long run. So that was just to show you different ways to go about your white balance. So before we get into our exposure, I wanna show you a couple of things that will really clear things up for you and help you understand how each tool functions and what is really happening on the back end. So it's not complicated, pretty simple. Let's use our good old grayscale image. I'm gonna pop this open, go in here, and let me show you a couple of cool things. I swear we're not gonna be here for too long. I'm gonna make it painless. Let's start with our primaries for exposure, and then we're gonna move to all different kind of methods. So just watch what's happening. Look at this one, okay? Look at the waveform and just watch what is happening. I'm actually gonna do this and I'm just gonna go to waveform and I'm gonna show you what you need to focus on. So if I were to raise my gain, just look what it does. It moves in a straight line, okay? It's not bending the curve. It's not doing anything. It's undestructive, okay? If I take my gamma, look what's happening. It throws a really nice, gentle curve on it. Very, very gentle. Look what's happening with lift. No bending. And guys, that right here is the power of what primaries are all about. They genuinely give you the most pristine image, and that's why I say maximize the hell out of your primaries before you move on and use any other tools. So now let me show you a different method of setting your exposure. Now we're in log wheels, and let me show you what happens. So they're a little different and could be confusing, but this is gonna help with the confusion. This is your traditional primaries wheels, lift, gamma, gain. This is your log wheels, shadow, midtone, highlights. Let me show you what happens when I raise my highlights. Watch what's happening, the difference. You see, just look at the curve and what is happening right here. This is why I cannot stress enough to tell you that use this over anything else, and then use everything else sparingly when you need to. Every tool here has a purpose, but don't just use it because you saw a video on YouTube and now you want to just use that tool because somebody used it online and now you think you should be doing that. Nothing will crack your image more than misusing log wheels. You really need to know what you're doing. Let me demonstrate that for you. Look at the midtones. Look what it's doing. You understand? Now, I'm not saying what you're seeing here is terrible. It's actually unbelievable. What this means is that it is super, super targeted. So if you know what you're doing, this is a freaking killer thing. For making quick little changes, if you don't need to go into the parallel or layer mixer nodes or anything like that, this could be a miracle worker, but you really need to understand what is happening here. Let me show you shadows. You see how it's moving? Now I want to get into a little granular detail in log wheels. So this is, let's try the highlights again. So let's just say I'm doing this, I'm bringing my highlights down and it's a bit too gentle and I want it to be just affecting the top and not like a gradual shift like what it's doing. Look at this, it's called high range. So I can control it. If I move it to the right, the whole thing is gonna move to the right. The curve is gonna get sharper. If I move it to the left, it's gonna get softer and it's gonna be more gradual. Let me show you what I mean. I'm moving it to the right. And look what's happening. It's getting so close to here, okay? Now, if I'm moving it to the left, look how gradual the change is. You get what I'm saying? Let's go back to normal. And this is going to be very useful because let's just say if you're just affecting the highlights a little bit and you just want to affect that, you can get in there and just affect those and not affect anything else. You don't have to always affect the entire image. So that is super useful. And same thing is going to go with this. If we do this and then I go to my lower range and I just want to affect the bottom area like this right here. I don't want to start the change right here and everything below. I only want to affect the bottom area right here and everything underneath that. And I can easily do it. And this is what I mean, guys. This is where the teal and orange looks are created. This is where a lot of the freaking grading sauce is done. But gotta be careful, tread lightly with these, and you really need to know what you're doing. So now I'm gonna reset that. This was log. And let me show you the third method. One of my favorite, only because if you use this in combination with primaries, it's a killer combo. And it's right here, contrast and pivot. Let me show you why I love it so much, because it's doing a lot of the work for you in the background. You don't even notice it. And here you go. If I crank this guy up, look what it's doing. It's creating such a gentle S-curve. I mean, just watch what it's doing. It's creating this S-curve for you with just one slider push. And then this pivot, that's the sauce. And let me show you why. If I go to the right, look what it's doing. It's moving the curve to the right. If I go to the left, it's moving the S to the left. So there's going to be a lot of shots. Let me just say, if I'm working with an African American gentleman who's backlit and I'm using my curves, then I got to go to the left to give him as much light as possible and still get some contrast. Vice versa, if I'm working with, a Caucasian and I want to take some light away from them to give them more juice in the skin so it doesn't look so pale, I'm going to go to the right. Just a quick example to tell you what's happening here. Love these. Look at how gentle it is. So imagine you start off with your primaries and then for that punch, contrast and pivot, and it'll get you right where you need to be. Primaries, contrast and pivot equals heaven. Now let's talk about the fourth method, and that's going to be the last method when it comes to our exposure, and that's going to be by using curves. A very popular method, and people just swear by it. And people who are coming from Photoshop, Adobe Suite, that life, curves are everything to them. I like curves too. I just think they leave a bit too much up to your interpretation. And I've worked on projects where the DPs were like, this is not what it looked like. The contrast is not the same. Can we do X, Y, and Z? And that's why if you stick with primaries, a lot of the times you're going to be in the right ballpark. But I'm still going to show you curves. So let's start off with curves. Pretty simple. If I grab this from the top and I move it to the right. Basically, curves is what we're looking at right here. That's what it is. Like right here, what we see in the waveform, that's what's happening. So if I go down, it's gonna go down. If I go up, if I create, I can create a S however I want. Curves can be very, very powerful because you can just literally create whatever shape you want, and they're very gentle and doesn't really crack your image unless you're messing with it too much and unless you create like 6 different points. And I've seen a lot of amateur colorists and they just think that, oh my God, they got a really cool look going on because they have like 1700 curves. Look what's happening to your image. It's done. Like you're just done with your image. It's garbage. You don't want that. You want it gentle. Like color grading, color correction, it's all about pristine. You got to keep the integrity of your image. That's what it's all about. Get your image where it needs to be without breaking it, without messing it up. Now within curves, we got 2 different options right here. If you hit these 3 dots, you're going to get editable splines and default anchors. I don't really recommend these, but there's a time and place for these, and we hopefully will have a shot that might require this method, and I will definitely use it. But let's talk about editable splines. One of my favorite methods, absolutely amazing. It does all the heavy lifting for you. You see that little point? What that's doing is that it's giving you a reference point to pull your contrast on the top end from it, and you can just, and it just makes the whole curve gentler. And then you can grab the bottom and you can do the same thing. And guys, it's amazing. I highly recommend this. I use it a lot. If I'm doing my initial exposure using curves, I will always be using this, and my preferred method. And then let me just show you the third method, which would be add default anchors, and that's what it does. So the one pro tip that I will give you, use this if you have a hazy shot. If a shot is really hazy, let's just say, ugly smog that we get in LA and we can't really see in the distance, this can help you with that. If you start fudging with this, it can really just pop so much information out of your image. But again, tread lightly. You got to be very, very careful. You can't start adding more stuff in there because this is what's going to happen to your image. Even with this, let me just see how we can just keep it proper without breaking it too much. So see, you just have to be gentle. Let's just say you got somebody in the image that's white and black in the same shot. You can create something like that, and then you keep your white person here, obviously, and your dark right here. But by lifting it or keeping it right here, we're giving them juice. And then by bringing it down, we're giving our Caucasian fella juice. And then everybody looks great on the screen without doing too much tracking and windows and this and that. And keep it simple. Keep it simple. It's going to keep your image pristine, and ultimately, you will get much better results. Now, let me show you another method for exposure, and this one particularly is used for simulating HDR. It's right here. Shadows and highlights. So watch what's happening to the curve. It's pretty gentle. I like it. It's pretty gradual and very subtle. And now watch the highlights. The drawback is that you don't necessarily have more control over it like we did with log wheels. But the good thing is that if you get something like that, this is the common practice. People will do something like that, and that's what's going to create that HDR sort of look, mostly used on drone footage. Now, throughout this module, I'm going to be trying out all these different tools that we've seen and really using each one to its full potential. So that was a lot with grayscale. So I obviously lied to you that it's going to be a quick little thing, but I hope it made a lot of sense to you and it debunked a lot of different things that you might have going on in your head, how each tool works when it comes to exposure. Okay, this is one of those things that if you do it right, it's gonna save you a freaking ton of time in the long run. Let's say this is our timeline and we have 6 shots. We're gonna analyze each shot and what it needs and write it down. So let's say in this shot, I'm gonna go through and what sticks out to me. So I'm looking at the sky in the back, and that's the key. So I want to preserve all the detail, but not only that, I want to accentuate the hell out of it. And then at the same time, I want to keep my subject as the main focus. This is going to help me determine how much or how little work each shot will need. And now if I move on to this one, it's pretty easy. If I dramatize the hell out of this, the background, sky, and all the colors in it, I can have my subject be a little silhouette, and that would be totally fine. We can still see him, and he's gonna stick out and look like a boss. But if the background is just epic and this is the best sunset you've ever seen, we're gonna sell the shot. This is just me determining what looks good as a colorist. This is not coming from a director. I'm just looking at the image and then trying to figure out what needs to be done. In this shot, we can see a couple of things, right? So again, the same thing where we can keep them silhouette and really punch in the sky and bring out that detail. If I silhouette my subject in this shot, it's gonna take care of the biggest problem, which is noise. There's so much noise in here, and that's gonna be taken care of. Let's go to the next shot. So if this is my hero, I'm gonna create a vignette, probably desat everything outside of it a little bit, and just give this as much juice as possible. And that's how I'm gonna handle this shot. If we look at this, the thing that sticks out to me is right here. So let's just say if this is our subject, then I'm gonna start here and work my way around. So these things are very important. And another thing that I can tell you just by experience with these shots is that when you go deep, like farther, image starts to get like bluer, and you have to use a couple of these, Luma versus SAT and SAT versus SAT, to pull that out. And these are the kind of things that I'm talking about. So once you work with variety of footage and different cameras, you start picking up these patterns, and then it makes it really easy to kind of just take mental notes. Eventually, you're not going to be writing stuff down all the time. You're going to be taking mental notes, and you're going to know exactly how you're going to attack each shot. And guys, I cannot emphasize enough how important this stage is, because if you just go in prepared, then it's just so easy. And if you don't go in prepared, you're going to be like a blind leading a blind. Like you're just going to be doing one shot at a time. It ends up taking so much longer and effort because you weren't focused. And if you weren't focused, you're kind of shooting in multiple different directions. It's just a waste. So analyzing your footage before color correction is a must. This is a lot of fun for me to talk about because my goal from this entire masterclass is to make you employable, and creating a lookbook does just that. Let's talk about what a lookbook is. It doesn't matter if you're color correcting or color grading. It's good business to give your clients some options. And that's all this is. Usually it goes like this. You create a Rec 709 look, which is basically your base grade. Then you create a hero look, which is going to be your favorite colorist cut, if you will. And then you're going to create a punchy look. So you're going to take your cut and kind of just exaggerate it a little bit. And then you're going to create a no look, which is basically you want them to hate and eliminate that right away. And then Rec 709, nobody wants. Punchy is going to be maybe too much for them. So then automatically they're going to pick your look. So that's a little game you got to play. But you got to present this to your client. And guys, presentation is everything, especially for a colorist. It's a conversation starter. And the lookbook is a solid way to do that. Let me show you what it looks like. So let's just create a Rec 709. What I want to do is I want to drop in my color transform. Don't worry about that. We'll take care of it in a second. I'm gonna create a node before this one, and in this one, we're just gonna, we'll pull everything back. And then I'll bring my mids up, and then I'll keep doing this dance until everything is looking kosher. I'll go right here and give it some saturation. Okay, so I see the detail right here in the cars and all that. So this pretty much can be a Rec 709. You know, one thing that I do want to do is I want to go in here and hue versus saturation, and I want to grab my blue and just pull that down a little bit, okay? So this is my Rec 709. I'm going to go ahead and save this. Saved. Now what I want to do is create another node, and this is where we start adding some punch. I'm not necessarily going for a full-on look, but let's just say, you know, this is my main thing. That's where I want to put most of my focus on. So I'm going to create a window like that. Boom. Something like that. I'm going to reverse it. I'm going to go in here, grab my curves, put more focus right in there. And then what I want to do is I want to create an outside node. And here I just want to kind of do the opposite. So not too much, because then you're going to start cracking your image. So something like that is good. Maybe a little bit lower. Something like that. It's fine. And then what we want to do is we want to grab this and we want to track this. Okay, so I'm going to track it forward, track it backwards, and that's a pretty nice track. Latches on really nicely. And let's just say I call this my hero look. Now I'm going to go ahead and create punchier look. So what I'm going to do is just add more contrast. Maybe lift my blacks a little, bring my highlights, my gain down a little, and then give it a bit more contrast. Bring this down. And you know what I want to do? I don't want to do a sloppy job, so I want to go in here and I want to go easy on that contrast. So I'm just going to do this, and I'm going to do that. Just super subtle, nothing too crazy. Now I want to go back and forth. So this was my hero, and then this is my punch. It's looking pretty good, but you know what? Like I said, I don't want to exaggerate it. I still want to do it right. So this is good. So that's my punch. Now I'm going to go ahead and create another one. And then in this one, what we usually do is kind of do the opposite. So I'm going to reset this node and then go ahead and just create sort of like a low contrast. You know, we can even reset this node and just do like a, make it a little bit cooler. Just give it a different look, and then we'll see what they say. But like, let's balance it out. So something like that. It's just a little different. So now we have our 4 looks, and let's make it full screen and move this over and get rid of this. So now I have my 4 looks. So I have my Rec 709, I have my hero look, I have my punchier look, and I have my no look. None of these look bad, so even this has its own little flavor that I like. I'm almost liking the rocks here more than here because it's actually looking nice and brown instead of this super red thing that's going on in the rest of them. Ultimately, I would go with my hero shot, but I will present this. This is my lookbook, and then let the client decide. And this is what starts the dialogue, and this is how you gain trust in their eyes. And once that happens, the bounce backs are out the window, and you are a freaking rock star. And you can just go out there at that point and do your own thing. And this is the foundation of color grading. Once you have this as a colorist, and if you start off color correcting things for them, you do stuff like that, present yourself as a rock star colorist, then you name your price. All of a sudden, you're going to go from junior colorist to senior colorist pay grade. Don't overlook this video because this will be the difference between killing it, getting a bump in your pay, or not having a job at all. Guys, before we begin, I just want to take a second to give you $1 million tip, and that is take as many notes as possible. When you're going through this, you think you got it, you don't need to revisit it, it's all stored in your head, but trust me, based on experience, you need this. So on a Mac, what you want to do is Command-Shift-4, and then when you hit a space bar, it will let you select a window that this little camera icon is, and then all you got to do is just left click, and then it'll take a snap. It'll pop it open in here, and then you can do a bunch of different things. So I can just draw on here and then write a little note and just say something, whatever I want to remember, or I can just save this, go to my desktop, and that's where it's dropping these images, and then have your Google Doc open, bring this image in, and just write a note, something like start with primaries, and then have a picture and move on. So the way your Google Docs, I would recommend setting them up based on per module. So one note per module, and then within those modules, break them up just as I have my lessons broken down within each module. So if you do that, you're golden. I'm gonna be very happy with you. You're gonna remember everything, and you're gonna create your own database that you can refer back to. All right, enough talk about boring stuff. Let's jump right in. All right, now on to everyone's favorite, what the hell do I do with skin tones? What's right, what's wrong? We're gonna figure out all of that in this color correction module with these shots. And I picked all kinds of footage, okay? So I got a shot with fair skin and super bright sun beaming in the background. Then I got a shot where it's looking all weird. It's shot with Sony, and you can just see the lips are looking purple and the cans in the back should be red because it's Coke, so we have to figure all that out. Sony is a biggest nightmare to work with when it comes to color correction and especially skin tones, but I'm going to show you ways to deal with it, which is going to make it a piece of cake, and that in itself will pay for this masterclass for you if you're using Sony cameras, which a lot of you are, and also it's the go-to event camera, corporate video camera, all of that. Wedding videos, everything is shot with Sony nowadays, so learning this could be a valuable trait. Now looking at this shot, we got a dark skin backlit that comes with its own obstacles and challenges. The skin is sitting right here, the sky is sitting right here, so we got to figure that out, how to make it work, and I'm going to show you that. And in this one, we have an African American gentleman with his hand sticking out the car, and just even by looking at this, you can tell that it's looking purple. It's weird. It's not looking like the skin color at all, and the entire image is a little bit more blue biased, and we can see that here everything is kind of lifted in the blue channel, and we have to adjust that. So this is what we got. Let's go attack it. So I'm going to start with this one. I'm going to pop it open. So first things first, we're not going to touch the skin till later. We're going to adjust everything else around that, and then we're going to create a vignette. We're going to pop her out, and after that we're going to get into skin. One thing you need to know about qualifiers, and yes, we will be using qualifiers to contain the skin and then try to control it, the actual skin color. Now, one thing you need to know when it comes to qualifying is that you need to create enough contrast, whether it's a luma contrast or color contrast to push the image as far apart as possible, so when you qualify it, it only picks out the portion you want it to pick out. If it's too broad, like how it is right now, log, if I try to qualify, it will qualify everything because there's not enough separation. Okay, keeping that in mind, let's go back and fix that where our image is bigger than UHD and it creates the letterboxing. So just click on fill and it will take care of that. Now let's go back into color and get going. First is going to be for noise reduction, second node is going to be primary, third is going to be LUT. And the results that we were getting, the best results were coming from CST when it comes to Sony cameras. So I'm going to stick with that. I'm going to go all the way down and select Sony S-Gamut 3, and that was giving me better results than the Cine. And then I'm going to choose S-Log 3, and it's okay, let it go crazy, because once we apply the Rec 709 and luminance mapping, it's going to protect everything and bring everything back. And now let's go in here. So this is an, somewhat of an overexposed shot. So to bring everything back, first thing that I'm going to do is this. I'm going to use my offset to kind of bring everything in the wheelhouse. So just watch what's happening. Then I'm going to go up and I'm going to park it somewhere around here. My focus is her skin. So I'm going to park it somewhere around here. Now I'm going to go in my highlights and I'm going to bring that down to just preserve as much information as possible in the background. Somewhere around here. Now I'm going to grab my gamma. I'm going to lift it. And now I'm focusing on her skin. Let's reset that. Okay. So, I mean, this is looking, that's not too bad. I'm seeing a lot of like green, like teal in my shadows. So let's try to correct that with our gamma. And then we're going to counter that with our bring my lift down a little bit, gamma up a little bit. Let's give it some saturation. Let's dial it back. I'm just looking at the color of the shirt and her hair. This is not bad. Okay. So now just keep in mind, these things we can take care of later on. We want to focus on this nozzle right here, which is black. The color of the car is black, and that's our black point. So as long as, like, look at our blacks, okay? So we are pretty leveled on that. And then up top, we're looking pretty good. Just look at this right here. So we're looking really good. We're well balanced. Now we know the skin is falling a bit too much on the magenta side, and we're going to take care of that. Like if we go completely before and after, we're going to take care of that. But we also got to keep in mind that she is Caucasian and she has a fair complexion. And a lot of the times, you know, there is a little bit of pink. So kind of keep that in mind. Everything else is looking good. I'm going to go ahead and create another node. And in this node, what we want to do is, let me just play this shot through. Okay, and I'm gonna park it on hero. So let's just say this is our hero. And see, already, I mean, just think about it, okay? So working with Sony, and what a nightmare it is to get it in the right ballpark. But just look at with the two things that I did, already it's looking so much better. And that's not the results that a lot of people get with Sony, you know? So already we're looking really, really good. We're off to a great start. Now what I want to do is I'm going to create a vignette. Anytime that happens, like how my window wasn't showing up, so the window selected, we can see it right here. The window selected, we can see it right here. We're on the right node. What the hell is going on? Anytime that happens, come in here and manually select power window, and then it's going to show up. So what I want to do is I'm going to just kind of select her like that, something like that, and then create a soft vignette and then reverse it. And now we're gonna go in here and pull that down. Now we're gonna create an outside. And bring her out like that. And then we can track it just to make sure. All right. So let's go back here. Now let's work on her skin. So here's the secret. There's a couple of different ways you can go about it. This is what I would recommend. If you want to blend the skin with the background, which is what you should be doing, especially for color correction, you don't want to be too aggressive. What I want to do is I want to create a parallel node in this case, okay? And then I'm going to go ahead and grab my qualifier. But remember that part where I said create enough separation before you get to that point, and we had done that. Just look at the separation we got going on. Like, we maxed out our image, and now when we go in and we select, we qualify the skin, it's fine. So now it's grabbing a lot more than just the skin. So what can we do about it? There's multiple different things that we're gonna look at, but the first thing that you need to see is right now it's selecting too broad of a color range. So we're gonna go under width and we're gonna start reducing that, and look what's happening. Now what we're gonna do is we are gonna shift it so it's only on the face right here. Now we're gonna shrink it again, and we're gonna move it around somewhere around here. So we've already gotten rid of a lot of gunk. Now what we want to tell it is, hey, don't select the darkest areas, keep the midtones. So in order to do that, I'm going to go under luminance and I'm going to pull that forward, and look what it's doing. Now the one thing that I don't like is that it's not grabbing her arm if I do that. So I'm going to leave that as is. I'm going to start bringing this in. So anything that's not as saturated, let's get rid of it. So okay, even that's not working. So I'm gonna go back. What else can we do? Nope. Because we've selected parallel node instead of layer node, everything that we're gonna do is gonna blend in. So that's the best part about it, and that's the secret sauce right there when you're color correcting instead of color grading. And just with skin in general, unless you're doing something extreme, this is a safer way to go about it. And now what happens is that if I go back in here, I can look at my skin, and honestly, the skin is looking pretty good. If this is the skin indicator and she is Caucasian, where she's falling right now is very, very natural, okay? So I actually don't know how much or how little we can do, but let's just mess around with it and see what happens. So I'm gonna give it a little bit more saturation. I'm gonna pull it back. Actually, you know what? Let's go back. And I just want to take my gain and take it a little bit on the warmer side. Pull the saturation back a little bit. Something like that. Just give it a little bit more life. And then what I want to do is I want to show you this. I want to go under mid-tone detail. And what that does is that it softens everything out. So if you see right here, and look what happens. If I take the mid-tone detail and just go back, see what's happening with the face. So if you're working on a fashion commercial or something like that, you can really use and abuse this part. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to bring it back. I'm going to keep it very natural. So I'm going to keep it somewhere around 30. So it just, and it evens out everything else. So like if you look at it, if we pull back, keep the image right here. If I go before and after, see how it just smooths out everything, like even the shadow areas. Like it just balances out everything, okay? Like smooths out everything. Just look at right here. Look at right here on her chest, arm, smooths out everything. So a little goes a long way. Once again, keep in mind, and this tip that I just gave you is $1 billion tip. This is for beauty work. This is for when you're working with women and when you have natural light and you want to spread it out and make it even. This is the sauce. Now that we did that, I don't think we need anything else, anything more than that, because it's looking very natural. It's looking really good. And if you think this is too much, like you want to desat it a little bit more, we can just pull this back. Something like that. You know, and this is off. This is without the skin work. This is with the skin work. Although I just personally think that this is for her complexion, we should have a little bit more red and magenta in it. So like this, even this makes me feel better. I'm gonna turn this on and just, you know, we're on the spot. We're right there, okay? This is where we're supposed to be. That's the skin tone indicator. We're on there. So something like that I'm pretty happy with. So now that we took care of that, I want to control this. I don't like how much color cast is on here. So what we can do is, one thing that I want to do first of all is I want to go under hue versus saturation. I want to grab my blue and I want to just bring them down overall, because look at our blue right here. So I want to control that. And maybe take our cyan and pull that back a little bit too. So that took care of this, okay? That took care of that, so nothing is nuclear anymore. See right there? So with Sony, you gotta do some of this work, but even so, I just showed you how to do all of that in a non-destructive way, okay? Because when you have 8-bit image, you don't want to create qualifiers all day long and go too crazy, too ham with it. Still keep it very organic and very broad, and you can still get the results that you want and get an image like this. Just look at it. Let's just play it back. Let me turn this off so we can see what is happening. Just look at it. So again, we're sticking with color correction. We could have done more refined beauty work on her, but that's for color grading, and I'm going to show you all of that. But for color correction and what we've done and what I just showed you, I mean, it's the cleanest way to do it, fastest way to do it, to get the best results and keep moving along, okay? So that is one shot. Moving on to this guy, which is going to be probably the toughest one out of everything that we got here. So let's go ahead, fix the scaling, fill it, come in here. We're going to create noise reduction. We'll probably be using our noise reduction in this one. We got our primaries, our LUT, and we're going to do CST. And there you go. So this is what I meant. I mean, just look at it. What the hell is going on? This is just not normal. Oh my God, this is not normal. And the green, this is the epitome of like everybody's nightmare with Sony's. So what do we got to do? Now the problem with a shot like this is that it's probably shot under fluorescent lights. So the color that we see here is exactly the color that was in the shot. But a couple of things that we still have to fix is we gotta make this white. We're just gonna have to do it whether we key it out or however we do it. And then we gotta fix his skin. But I went ahead and I just gave the Coke the right red. And we can also bring that red down a little bit. Something like that. And then that puts his lips and everything in place, and like his neck and his ear. That starts to look normal. And now we can go in here and just balance it like I did, just enough. And we still have to give it enough contrast for us to have information to pull a good key. And if we go to before, we can see that the wall is brown and not green. And same thing is here, that's happening. So if we remember from the previous shot how our cyan were super dominant, I think the same thing is happening here. So for that, I'm just gonna have to pick my color right here and bring it down. Or one thing that I want to try before I do that, go under hue versus hue and see if we can turn it into the color it should be. Actually, that just makes it worse. So yeah, I'm gonna go under hue versus hue, grab that, bring it down. And this is giving us what we're looking for. The wall is starting to look much better. This is looking neutral, and then on top of it, look at the bottle right here. It's looking very neutral. So this shot is coming along minus his skin. And I think we should do a vignette and then start working on his skin. So I'm gonna pop him out even more as much as possible. I'm gonna do something like that. Soften it as much as possible. And then bring it down, not too much. This is good. Now I'm going to create an outside. Something like that. Give them that light, and then let's go track them. Okay, tracking is done and it's really good. Let's play it through and see if it looks believable. Alright, it's looking pretty believable, and that's what the windows did. Quite a bit. We're seeing a lot more information. Now it's time to do our skin work. And again, let's do parallel node. And I'm gonna go ahead and pull information. And then try to reduce this. Move it over just to grab the skin. Maybe extend it a little bit. So in this case, we probably have to do two separate keys. One for the brown part of his skin, and the other one like where there's too much green cast. Okay, so I'm just gonna isolate it, and I'm gonna really try to focus on one part. Give it a lot of blur, and then I'm also gonna create around his skin, and then we're gonna have to track it. Window around his skin, and then let's track it. So there is a lot of noise that's happening, like if you look at around his ears, so we gotta clean that up. So I'm going to use my clean black, and it's getting better. Alright, so let's park it there and see what we need to do. So let's look at his skin and look how much green there is. So that's not good. So we're going to go right in here. I'm going to do my offset, and I'm going to move this over. And then let's see what we need to do. So this is where we were, and this is where we are. And just remember, guys, he is picking up a lot of fluorescent color off of probably the counter or whatever it is. So that is living there in the space, and it might be impossible to take out, but let's see how clean the key is. So the key is pretty clean, and we are bringing in a lot of warmth into that image. And now I'm gonna go here, and I'm only gonna grab the cyan parts, and let's blur it out quite a bit. Okay, and I'm gonna do the same thing, so we're just gonna do a screen. Give it some softness, and then let's track it. And now we just wanna pull that down. So the way I'm gonna do it is I'm gonna go under hue versus saturation, and I'm gonna select that. I'm gonna pull it down. So that's doing a good job neutralizing that. Like you can see it right here and evening out the color. So guys, if I just grab these two and do this, like look at his skin, and really ultimately these four are working on his skin. So if we just do that, play it through, turn it on and off, like look at this. And then if we can turn all of these on, now look at that. And now before and after. So as I said, this was gonna be the hardest shot. We knew that going in, and this is the way I would approach something like that. So in this case, it was just too distracting to have that purple magenta thing happening. So I took care of that first right after the LUT, and then I went back to my primaries and balanced out as much as I could. Then I went back and took out as much cyan as possible, and I think we can even take out more. So I'm gonna go back in there, grab some of the green and pull it down a little bit more, and that's helping. Like look at right here, right here, right here, and then back there, and that's helping quite a bit. And then we took out that gunk, and then we created vignette to pull out his face, and then we gone ahead and we did some keying on him to like really even out the skin and just give it some warmth. And let's look at it. Let's play it back and check it out one more time. So started with this, ended with that, and let's just see if we pull everything out besides the LUT where we stand. So if I go in here and just leave the LUT on, just look at it. So let's just do this. Save this version, and then I'm gonna go and turn everything on. So this is just with the LUT as is, with amazing Sony color science, and then this is where we got. And I can still see that I can pull the color out of the cans, like it's still pretty strong. So for that, I will create another parallel node, and I will just go with hue versus saturation. I'll grab the red and I'll just pull it down. And again, this is blending everything in. So in this case, what I want to do, I don't want to take more away from him. So I'm just going to go ahead and do this and just do that and then track it. So we just took care of the cans, brought it down a little bit, and this is with the LUT only, and that is without the LUT what we created. And we took care of, like, look at how white the lens cap looks, the wall looks like the way it's supposed to, this area looks super neutral, the coke looks like what it's supposed to. And then we took care of his lips, his ears, his face, and then the weird highlight action that was happening here, took care of that. And this was a little bit challenging how we got there, but I wanted to keep it as simple as possible because we were doing just color correction. But in this one, it just needed to be done. And another thing that I showed you in this particular example is that sometimes you have to create multiple windows like we did on this one just to attack different portion of his face. And I hope you guys found this helpful. Let's move on to the next shot. In this shot, we have a darker skinned gentleman backlit. So this is going to have its own set of challenges, and let me just analyze it really fast. So I know that I'm going to be making selection on his skin. I also know that I'm going to be bringing it up when I select it, so we can have more detail in his skin than everything else. And what we can do for a starter is we can keep the image pretty conservative, so we have all the detail in the shadows and the highlights, and then once we start making selections, we can start accentuating each element of this shot. So let me show you what I mean. First node is going to be our noise reduction, second is going to be primaries, and this is our LUT, and this is shot on Canon, and we know Canon is better with LUTs. So we're going to start off with that LUT, C-Log 3 LUT. And what we're going to do, we're going to go back and we're just going to preserve our highlights. So I'm going to go in here, use the highlights controller, and bring everything back. And I'm going to keep it somewhere around here. Now I want to lift my gamma a little bit to just give them some juice. And I want to take my lift and bring it down. So we have detail all around. I want to bring my gamma a little bit more to give them a little bit more. And then I want to just do this same game. Pull and push, pull and push. Okay, this is looking pretty good for now. And I think what we can do is, if you look at the top, it's a little bit more on the red side. So if we want to balance it out, I can just grab my gain and move it towards blue. And kind of do that. Just trying to balance the image right now. Okay, this is not bad. So let's just say we're happy with what we see. You know, in a normal world, you would be okay with this. Like if you turn this in, nobody's gonna have any issues. They're gonna be okay with it, but we gotta do a lot more than that. So let's go ahead and create a vignette. And I'm just going to create a vignette around him like that and just kind of keep it broad. Something like that. And then I'm just going to give it a generous feathering. And let's create an outside node. And then anytime you lift the lower mids, you kind of have to give it saturation to make up for the saturation loss. So we're going to do something like that. And now if I look at it and just see what these two nodes are doing, they're doing quite a bit. We're pulling a lot of information back, and we're giving a lot of information in to his skin and to our subject. Now that we got that covered, and I don't think we need to track it because that's staying pretty tight. Yeah, so we don't have to worry about that. Let me go grab his skin now, and we're gonna start working on the skin. So I'm gonna go in here. Usually you get the best skin from the forehead, so just a little FYI. I'm gonna expand that a little bit, and then I'm gonna reduce the saturated parts, and then go back on that. And now let's just add blur quite a bit. Let me see where his skin is sitting. So his skin is sitting in a pretty good area, so we don't necessarily have to worry too much about his skin looking a different color than what it is. Like, this is what his skin looks like. This is my brother, and I know what his skin looks like. It looks exactly like that. This is what I want to do. There's multiple ways we can go about it. We can lift him up a little bit from here. We can give it some gain. To bring him out, right? And this is looking pretty good. And then if we want to restrict that, we can obviously do a pretty wide vignette like that, and that way it's only affecting him and not the outside. And then let's go ahead and track that. So it's pretty subtle and I like what it's doing. It's pretty good. Now one thing that I want to do, I'm going to create a parallel node, and then this is what I want to do. So now I'm going a little bit further than the scope of color correction, but I want to do this. I want to just grab my sky, and this is the best way to grab your sky. Use luminance and look how clean that is, and there's just no jiggery pokery going on. It's super clean. And now I just want to give it a color. So maybe we can just take it easy a little bit. And that's another way of creating colors. Instead of giving it saturation, because saturation will add a lot of noise and gunk, you can really create colors by using what I'm doing, which is by gain, gamma, lift. And again, primaries will give you the most pristine, cleanest image. You can also do this. You can use the offset and really create the DNA of that look, because it's basically pulling everything then and taking it where you want it to go. So it's going to be more subtle than, let's just say, if you're using one portion of it, gain, gamma, or lift. So now if I go here and hide that, just look at the impact that we're creating by one, and it's looking natural because it's not a window or anything like that. It's a key-based operation. And then let's just go before for the entire image. Pause it here and then go after. And if you think that, you know, hey, it's too much, then we can just adjust that. Like we can take it here, and now it's not that much, but it's just giving the whole image a nice warmth. And that's on your preference. Like based on your preference, what do you want? Like, I mean, if you do want blue and want to show night, then you can really do that too. If you want it to look like a clean, crisp sky, then you can do that. We just did that. So like you can just make it blue. It's up to you, but you can pull really clean keys. And again, with parallel, you're blending everything in. So that's the best part about it. And we use this to pull his skin out. We use these to like really pull them out from the background. And then let's just do, I'm gonna disable everything besides my LUT and create a new version. And then now let's activate everything. And let's look at the two versions that we created. So left is just the LUT, right is just a color corrected version with a little bit of work. And guys, the proof is in the pudding. I mean, come on. Little goes a long way. Little goes a long way. And that's the song that I'm gonna sing for this entire master series. We're not getting too crazy. We're very limited to what we're doing in color correction, because we just want to keep in mind that this is going to get translated over, let's just say, 500 to 800 shots. Now, if we want to just get some extra credit in, we can pop our background from everything else, and we can even start doing that here as well. And the way that's going to happen is by adding contrast and pivot. So if I do contrast here and bring this down, you can start seeing how it's gonna start pulling this information. See, it's gonna get real aggressive, but it's not gunky. It's keeping everything in. Even if I show you right here, just look, it's keeping everything in. Nothing is getting crazy. And then you can do the same thing from at the bottom too, and really accentuate that. I like the way it was, but it's totally up to you what you're going for. I like this because the focus was him, but yet we still had a lot of information in the back. And what we can do is, let's say I want the midtones to be blue, but then this area right here, the highlights, I want them to have a little bit of a red, or, you know, different colors. So then I can just do something like that. So now so if I turn this off and on, so you can see now I'm keeping my blue, but I'm just adding a little bit more. And it's all about, with color correction, it's all about creating that color separation, that luma contrast. And once you mix the two, you get a really beautiful image. And now if I do pull these two images, just look at it. And that was done just doing color correction, nothing else. We're not fudging with anything. We just made his skin look accurate to what it's supposed to. We fixed his skin. We brought out the detail in the back by doing the least amount of work. And there you have it. Let's move on. And this is our last shot in the people section. I'm going to go back in here, grab my shot. Under scaling, I'm going to do fill, and we're going to go back into color, and this is shot with Sony A7S, and we're going to leave the first one for our, so let's just play it through first of all and see what's happening. So a couple of things. The sky doesn't look necessarily like a LA sky. It should be more on a warmer side, not blue. So I feel like the white balance is off a little bit. And the hand is looking purple, so we got to fix the hand. Other than that, we're just going to leave everything as is. That's the point of this module. It's color correction. And we just got to make everything look proper and juicy. I'm going to park it right here. This is going to be my hero frame. Let's go. First node is noise reduction, primaries. And here we got our LUT. Slog 3, Rec 709 here, Rec 709 here, and luminance mapping on. Everything started to look good. Saturation mapping on, and just like we predicted, look at this hand. Wow. We're looking at this hand. What's the deal? What can we do? And we can see right here how the entire image is blue biased. Blue is high, and it's just the offsets. We can easily see that here. So let me show you another way to do it. Like I showed you printer lights, and pretty much that's what it is right here. So these are your printer lights, but this time I'm going to do it here so you can see what's happening. So I'm going to take my blue, because the entire blue channel is lifted. I'm just going to take that and bring it down, and look what happens. I'm going to leave it somewhere around here. Now what I want to do is I want to take just my gain of my red, because look at the blue is pretty up. Like I want to bring the red up just a little bit, not too much. Something like that. Okay, so we were able to pull a lot of that color out. It is still kind of green heavy. We see that. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go to my gain and pull this down. Something like that. So that's not looking too bad. Let's pull it down a little bit more. Okay, that's fine. So I'm looking at my whites, and like my black levels are starting to look good. We're gonna fix the top one step at a time. This truck in the back is looking good too. Before after. And now that we're seeing this, let's attack the biggest problem, and I think we should just get right into it. Let me play it back, and yeah, let's just there's a couple of different ways we can do it. Okay, so I'm going to show you the easiest way. We can go in hue versus hue. We can either click on it and adjust it, which I don't recommend, but what I do recommend is clicking on magenta here and then going in and doing something like that, and then even like you can pick red and bring it down. So now you can see that we fixed that. So that was the easiest way to do it. That's the way that I would recommend for color correction purposes. But let's just save this version, cancel this, and now let's do it. Create a parallel node. Now we're gonna key it out. Didn't mean to do that. Let's go under qualifiers, key it out, and now let's start selecting the area that we want to work on, and reduce this, add a lot of blur. Now I'm gonna pull out of here, and if you look at what's happening, just look at that, how off we are. Look at this. This is crazy. This is where the skin is supposed to be, and this is where we are. So we're just gonna go in here. We're gonna go in offset, move this, keep it somewhere around here, and then pull out. See what's happening. Are we getting in the ballpark? Is it too far? So this is where we started, this is where we are, and let's see. Okay. So I mean, this is the before was crazy. So this is before, right here is the skin, and now here's the skin. And we can meet in the middle, you know? This is where we started, this is where we are. And that's how you fix skin on the Sonys. And now what I want to do is what we've been doing, which is we're going in here because we're picking up that pattern that it's doing something weird in this channel. So we're just gonna pull this down a little bit to get that color out of our shadows and keep clean, crisp whites. And then what I want to do here is I want to again select my sky by using this, and I want to grab my sky, but this time what I want to do is I want to add saturation in there too, because I don't want to necessarily keep this in. So I'm gonna do this and then just soften the hell out of it. And now what I want to do is make it warm, something like that. So this is where it was, this is where we are, and that to me is a California sky. And that's not necessarily color grade, but it's also not very much color correction. But just because I hate this color of the sky so much that I just had to do something about it. But you can obviously blend the two and split the difference, you know. So even something like that would be splitting the difference. And now if we go here and get rid of everything else, just keep the LUT version open, and I'm gonna save that, and now I'm gonna go and turn everything on. And now if we compare the two, if we compare this is our final version to the LUT version, you can just see what's happening in the hand and how we were able to attack that. So this is our final. Look at the arm, or look at the hand, and look at everything around it. And then this is our before with just LUT. And then obviously this is before. So guys, this was people for module 3 color correction. So we fixed that shot, worked on the skin, was probably the easiest shot. This was probably the hardest shot we worked on. Had to do a lot to get it right. We had to create multiple passes for the skin to get it just right. This one we had a lot of fun with. It wasn't that hard to work on, but still we were able to get a lot of detail out and preserve pretty much everything, just even the detail in his hair that we got back without losing the contrast. And then in this shot, it was set up for a failure, and we were able to make a lemonade out of lemons. That's it. Moving on to products. All right, finally we're in the project. We're gonna get going, and I'm gonna start with landscape. Right now I'm in the finished timeline. You guys should be in the start timeline, but follow along. This is the first shot. We're gonna analyze it. We're gonna play it a couple of times and then get right into it. And just remember, this entire module is about color correction, as if we're grading a documentary, we're coloring a regional spot. We gotta make it look poppy, we gotta make it look good, but that's it. We're not creating a grade, anything like that. We're just taking out all the distractions and putting the emphasis where it needs to be, and that's what we're gonna be working on in this module. So let's jump right in. This is our first clip. I'm gonna play it back a couple of times, and then I'm gonna take you through what's happening, what we need to do to give it that juice. All right, so when I watch this, just look at the scopes and just analyze this, okay? It's really, really cool because we have so much information. Everything is there. And this one was shot on in 8-bit, actually, Canon C200, but you know, Canon's image is just unreal, so this is more than enough information to do whatever we got to do with it. Color science in their C-Log is just next level. If you go back to my cameras module and go through all the different cameras that we attacked, for Canon C200, the best results came from the LUT. So I'm gonna start off with the LUT. That's gonna be our starting point. And then we're gonna go into our primaries and we're gonna balance everything out. So that's gonna be the first thing. Then we're gonna start adding saturation. And after that, once we have our global settings sort of dialed in, we're gonna jump in and we're gonna start putting the emphasis on the dude and his feet and like him walking, and then that should be the center of attention. But the background is the juice, because just look at the detail in the sky and everything. So we're gonna accentuate the colors in there, and I think that's just gonna be about it for this shot. So let's start attacking it. I'm gonna pull this down so you guys can see what's happening on the screen. I'm gonna go here. So at the top, I'm always gonna leave it for noise reduction. So this is gonna be, think of this as our first layer. This, we're gonna leave it up top. We're not gonna start with noise reduction. We're not gonna add noise reduction because that is very taxing and is gonna slow down your entire machine. So we're gonna leave it until we need it. So this is gonna be our primaries, and then I'm gonna create another layer, and then this is gonna be my LUT. So let's just start here, and then we're gonna build as we go. So I'm gonna go in here, I'm gonna go to Canon LUTs, and it should be this guy. So I'm gonna drop this in, and it's looking good, and you can see that the LUT is doing a good job because it's not pushing and pulling too much. Everything is still very nice and nothing is stretched out, so that's how you know that you're applying the right LUT. And the thing is that it's sunset, so I want to bring this down and keep it somewhere around like 768-ish for the highlights, and then bring up my shadows a little bit too. But let's just get going. So guys, for this module, I'm going to be sticking with my keyboard and my tablet, okay? So then you guys can easily follow along and see what I'm doing on screen. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to pull the gain down, okay? So right now, I'm just focusing on the background. I'm not focusing on my guy right now. I'm focusing right here, okay? Somewhere around here. Now what I want to do is pull my lift up around here somewhere. And now I want to take my gamma and lift it up a little bit. Bring my lift down. You know the dance. And then pull my gain up a little bit, somewhere around there. So we were there, we started here, we ended up here, and it's okay, just hang in there, okay? We're getting some detail back, which is what's more important here. Now what I want to do is I want to start adding saturation in here. Okay, so now we're starting to see some color in our sky and also the grass and just the autumn leaves. It started to come in and it's looking pretty nice. What I need you to focus on is, I'm going to make this a little bit bigger so we can see this better. What I need you to focus on is what's happening down here. So let's balance this out, okay? Alright, so now what I was using, you can see it in the keystrokes. So I was using my printer lights just to balance out the blacks, and it did that. Like you can see it right here and right here. It's looking pretty good. So the white balance is looking really good right now. And now we're getting a lot of color where we want it, and it's looking good. Now one thing that I do want to try is my highlights and shadows. In a case like that where you have dark and bright, like you have a lot of dynamic range that's being tested, a lot of the times when in this situation I like to mess with my shadows and highlights and see if we can pull something cool out of it. So I'm gonna take this up to say 30, and I'm gonna take this down to like 65-ish. And then what I want to do is actually, you know what, I'm gonna bring the highlights down first and then bring the shadows up. So something like that. And now what I want to do is I want to use my contrast and pivot to just give it more pop, okay? So you'll see. And if you remember how contrast and pivot works, okay. So just see how much we're about to, just watch how much we were able to pull out of this image, right? So this is before, this is after. We're still keeping it very gentle, and just look how much detail we pulled out. And what we can do is we can always raise the gain up, something like that, to give the image a little bit more pop. And then I'm gonna bring the lift down somewhere around here, maybe bring my gamma down to give the image a little bit more saturation, something like that. Let's play it back. we were able to pull out quite a bit, okay? So now what I want to do is I want to take this part and just really pop it out, like almost like a candy store, pop it out, and then let the background be, okay? So just look at how much we are able to pull out already, right? This is like us basically balancing our image and giving it saturation and popping as much as possible. Now what I want to do is watch this. So the way I'm gonna accomplish that is by using my gradient window, and I'm gonna do this with that and pull it and set it right here, okay? And if you do your highlights, activate your highlights right here, you're able to see how much of the image it's affecting, and I want to do something like that. And now here I kind of want to go ham, so I'm gonna do this. Watch this, okay? I'm gonna go back to my highlights and shadows, and I want to create sort of like a HDR deal here. So I'm gonna do something like that, and I'm gonna bring this down like that, and then I'm gonna use my contrast and pivot. And now if I do before and after, just watch that. See how much we were able to pull. And now what I want to do in this node is I want to do this. Watch that, okay? I don't even think I need to do it in this node, but just watch these two layers. So after the LUT, how much work we did just in 2 nodes. It's kind of incredible, right? So I'm going to keep this here, and this is what I want to do now. If you look at his shoes, I don't like what's happening here. They're supposed to be black, and they're just picking up some random color. In a case like this, what we can do to get the gunk out of the shadows is I'm going to use something called sat versus sat. So I'm going after saturation versus saturation, and here I can see that this is the low end. So low saturation right here, high saturation right here. So if I grab this and pull it down, look what happens. It gives me my shoes back, okay? And then I can go in here and bring all the detail that I had everywhere else. So now it's only making, it's giving the juice to everything else, but then it's making my shoes look proper, and also I like what it's doing to my jeans as well. It's pulling the colors out of that. So just look at, there's the white is recovered from like a blue little action that we had going on, and then just look at the shoes. They're looking much better. Now at that point, what I want to do are 2 things. I can create one more layer, and now I want to use hue versus saturation. And this is what I want to do. I'm going to go under here. I'm going to go hue versus saturation. And I want to pull red in all these colors, blues and reds up, okay? I want to just give it more saturation. So if I grab this and I go right here and I just go up, look what's happening. It's bringing up so much more information here, which looks really cool. Now I'm going to go to my blues and I'm going to do the same thing. Actually, I can't do the same thing because it's doing a weird thing. It's adding more blue in here. I mean, if I do a qualifier, I'll have a better luck, but I don't want to do that right now. So let me just do something else. Okay, let's go back, and this is looking good. That's fine. That's looking good. Now, see a weird artifact that's happening on these leaves? Like, look at this. And that's because when we were using shadows and highlights in this node, this is what created that, because we're just like really pushing it. And to control that, that's where noise reduction is going to come into play. So once I start adding noise reduction, look what happens here, okay? So I'm going to start lightly and then take it up a notch if we need it. But chroma, this is what's causing this issue. It's the gunk in the RGBs, and as soon as I do this, it should take care of it. Just look. I mean, just look at that. I'm going to show you before, after. Okay, it's freaking magic. Like this. Yeah, the noise reduction is just insane. So now if I select everything minus the LUT, it will show us where we started. And now look at where we are. And again, guys, I was going for that. Now, if you just go, hey, this is way too much candy, it's just not looking natural anymore, blah, 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 then there's a simple fix. That's why usually we have our global node right here, because what you can do is a couple of different things. So I'm going to give you all the options. Do a global adjustment, you know, take your saturation, bring it down until it looks real, something like that, and then play it back and you go, you know what, this is pretty cool. Actually, let's just save this version. So I'm gonna save this, and then I'm gonna go back and I'm gonna reset my saturation. So now we have these two versions, and now I'm gonna create a new version and show you something else. So watch this. We don't even have to do a global saturation. We can just pull out colors out of things that we think should be brought down a little bit. So I can take the grass and the yellow and just bring it down a little, and then I can leave the color in the sky. So now that's our third version. And what else I can do is I can go, let's look at this. And let's create one more version, and this is where I'm just gonna push it a little bit more. So I'm gonna go, let's just raise my gain up a little bit more, bring my gamma down a little bit more, and this version is gonna be the poppy version. Okay, so now this is it. That's all the work we're gonna do to this image, and then we're gonna move on. But let me just turn my outlines off and make this bigger, move this out of the way. Okay, so this was our main look that we created. This one was the desaturated version, overall, you know, saturation. This one was the controlled saturation, where we just pulled the greens and the yellows down a little bit, and then this one had the most pop. So you be the judge, whatever you like. I'm in love with this. I really like this. I can get behind this one too, actually. But, you know, this one just gives me more flexibility. And even if somebody's TV settings are set to vivid or whatnot, it's gonna handle it compared to something like that, where these might get blown out. And then these, if you guys, you know, if that does something for you, that's cool. I'm in love with that one. So that is just one thing that we created. And I'm gonna try to keep using different tools so you get a hang of what to use when. So in this one, we used primaries, we used our printer lights, and we used highlights and shadows, and then we did our standard vignetting, and then we pulled the colors out by using global saturation and isolated saturation. Let's move on to the next shot. All right, let's analyze this shot really quick, and then we're gonna jump right in. So right from the get-go, we know that the sun is gonna be a problem. It's a backlit shot, so we have two options. One, we can go somewhat of the HDR direction, and we can keep a lot of information in our dude and everything else. Or we can just kind of let him go and turn him into a silhouette. We can still have some detail preserved, but keep the image natural, but then make the sky pop. And that's the direction I'm gonna go in. And one thing that I just wanna clarify is that a lot of the times when you're gonna be working on projects that are color correction based, you're gonna be turning and burning. So you can't really get too fancy with it. And that's why I'm gonna try to keep my node tree very simple throughout this entire module, because guys, that's way more important for you to understand when you're attacking a certain job, what's required and how you should approach it. You don't want to get carried away, because with color grading, it sounds really simple, but the next thing you know, you're going to be spending 5 hours on one shot, and then you try to middle click and apply the same look to the next clip, and it doesn't translate, and then you're going to end up spending 2 more hours on that shot, and you have 498 more shots to go, and now you're panicking because you don't know what the hell to do. So just follow along and hear all these things that I talk about, because everything is connected. I have a completely different approach when I'm working on a reality TV compared to when I'm working on a high-end commercial. So just keep these things in the back of your head. All right, let's jump right in. You guys already know what I'm gonna say. So noise reduction is the first node, primaries is the second, LUT is the third, and then we're just gonna build it accordingly as we go. So I'm gonna start with this. That's my LUT. Everything is looking good, so that's fine. I'm gonna come in here and I'm gonna reduce the contrast, and we're gonna do the same thing. We're just gonna bring this down a little bit, like somewhere around here. So if you just look at the sky when the juice starts coming in and is around here, okay? And that's where Roger Deakins like to keep his stuff. If you watch Sicario or something, everything is living in this world. But we're gonna bring it up a little bit. I'm gonna raise my lift, bring it down somewhere around here, that's fine. I'm gonna bring my gamma up a little bit and do that little dance. Bring this down, bring my gain down a little bit, somewhere around here. So that's what we did. We started here, we ended up here, that's okay. Let's add saturation. Somewhere around here, it's not bad. Okay, so one thing that we already know, that the saturation on his skin is a problem, so I'm not even gonna worry about that. I'm just gonna look at the sky and give that the juice that it needs, and then I'm gonna worry about him in a little bit. Because in color correction, you gotta attack the skin. You can't just leave it as is. That's one thing that we have to work on. So I'm gonna show you the tricks that we're gonna use to deal with that, one thing at a time. So for now, the sky is looking good. There's a lot of detail in the sky. There's some detail in him too, and I like that. And if you look at the balance of my shot, like the shadows or the dark areas, the white balance is on point. The highlights, the white balance is on point. So we're good on that. Now I'm looking at it. Okay, so one thing that we're noticing is, let me make this bigger and just have you look at the noise in here. Okay, so you see all that noise? If you're gonna be pulling keys, this is the first thing that you gotta take care of. So you gotta add noise reduction to get rid of it, or else your keys are gonna be garbage. So this time I'm gonna go heavy. And we're gonna do something like that. And then I'm gonna go into my chroma. Something like this. And if I do before and after, just look at what it does. And then when you pull out, look at it. Just the noise is gone, okay? It's just completely gone. Look at the gunk, like around his ear. Okay, this is crazy. When I'm punched in this much, got it? So this is important. Noise reduction in Resolve is everything. And like I said, it's worth paying the $300 for the studio version, because you just got to get your image like that. Let's just look at the scopes, what's happening. Before noise reduction, after noise reduction. Just cleaned up so much. So once that's taken care of, we can do this. We can go in here, and what else do we need right now to really pop this image more? I will say this. I want to get a lot of colors out of the sky, okay? So the way I'm going to do that is by using my gain and gamma, because that's where this is living. So for my gain, let's just take it a little bit on the red and magenta side. So raise it up a little bit. Maybe something like that. Okay. So that's looking nice and it's looking natural. Now I want to take my gamma in the similar direction and see what happens. That's also nice. Just start to look right here how it's adding such a nice color. And again, I'm not worried about him. We're gonna take care of all of that, okay? So this is looking good. There are multiple ways we can take care of him. So I'm gonna show you the fastest way. And fastest way does not mean that it's not effective. So that's gonna be luminance versus saturation. So this is the darkest, this is the brightest area. So if I were to click right here, it's gonna lock it in and only grab the darkest area. And then if I just grab this and pull it down, look what we're doing. Just keep your focus right here and look what we're doing. So we're pulling quite a bit of saturation out of him. So that's one way to do it. What I can do is just create a version here, and the version is created, and now I can reset this, and here's a second way to do it. Now this is going to be hue versus saturation. I can just literally pick this right here, and then go to saturation and pull this down a little bit. And because it was targeted, it did not affect my sky. So that's another way to do it. So now if I go back to 1, which was done through luminance versus saturation, and then 2 is done through hue versus saturation. Again, just keep in mind, for color correction, you don't necessarily want to jump into qualifiers right away for things like that, because you got to turn and burn. So keep that in the back of your head. And now what I want to do is I want to create a very realistic light fall off in vignette. So I'm going to do this. I'm going to keep this right here on this edge, and I'm going to pull it diagonally because that's where the sun is. And now if I do Shift H, I'm going to see the fall off here. And this is what we want to do here now, okay? I'm going to reverse it, go in here, go back here, and then kind of pull that down, because this is where the light is coming from. So just give it a little bit more direction, right? It's okay that he's falling off a little bit. That's cool. It just makes it dramatic. We still see him because the whole shot is creeping up on him. So he's the center of attention. So let's just save this version, and now we can play around with our highlights and shadows again and see what we can pull up. So I'm gonna raise my shadows, give them something like that, and then bring my highlights down, and then go into my contrast and pivot. And give it a lot of juice. And now we can come in here, or was it this? It was this, and pull this down a little bit more. So something like that. Now let's go to our natural version and then our somewhat of HDR version, and let's pop them. Let's make it big right here. And now what we can do is create another version, and I'm just gonna exaggerate it even more, like really make this one, just push it like crazy, something like that. And then go back in here. And then in here and pull that saturation more. And what else I want to do is this. Okay, so I want to I want to go in here. I want to go to luminance versus saturation, and I want to pull that down as well a little bit, and then keep the juice everywhere else. Okay, so that's my fourth version. Now let's just pop it open, make it big, analyze it really quick, and see which one we like the most. So I'm just giving you variations, you know, for you to pick from, but then whichever one you pick, you got to run with it, and you want to make sure that it's realistic and you'll be able to apply that on the entire piece. It just don't look at just one shot. Whatever you're going to be working on, I'm just giving you different perspectives, and I'm still trying to keep it less complicated. I'm not adding a ton of nodes. I'm still trying to keep it all kosher. So when I'm looking at this, for me, I like most of them. I probably don't like this one too much. This one is the most natural, so if you go with this, you're safe, and that one was the first version anyways. I also like this. If you're working on like a movie or something, this is kind of dramatic and that looks cool, but this will be my choice for this particular example, and that was our first grade. All right, let's keep moving. Man, love this shot. It's a short film that my buddy directed and shot. Ezra Gentle did a killer job. A really good film. I love his stories, and the best thing about him is that his actual script is just always a banger. So this was a lot of fun to work on. So one thing that's happening here is anytime your 4K is bigger than the UHD aspect ratio, it will add letterboxing on the bottom and the top. So to handle that, we just open retime and scaling. We go under scaling and we say fill. Done. We're good to go on this shot. And if you guys remember, the best results that we got on the Sony footage was through CST. So that's what I'm going to use. I'm going to use the color transform. And first node is going to be for noise. Second is going to be for primaries. Third is going to be for our LUT, or in this case, CST. So I'm going to go in here and I'm just going to pick S gamut 3, and I'm going to pick S log 3, I believe. Just want to make sure. Yeah, it's definitely 3. And then I'm going to go in here and let's choose Rec 709 for our output color space, and then we're going to choose Rec 709 for our gamma. And already we're looking pretty good. We're going to do the luminance mapping, we're going to do saturation mapping, and guys, I mean, come on. This to this could be done. Like, we could be done with this, okay? We don't even need to raise it too much. This could be a perfect silhouette, because look at this. And it's shot beautifully, slow-mo. Amazing silhouette, but let's just bring the lift up a little bit so it's not being crushed. And I'm just gonna take my lift, bring it up. And keep it around here somewhere. And now one thing that I'm noticing is that there's a bit of red in my shadows, and it's clear right here how the red is lifted. In here you can see that too. So the red is kind of lifted compared to green and blue. But what we should do before we adjust that is to add noise reduction, and after that you will see the change in the scope. So watch this, okay? If I just go 5, better, and then I want to go to like 11-ish and then do chroma correction. See what I mean? So if I go before and after, now it's a lot clearer to what we need to do. And what I'm gonna do is there's multiple ways to adjust this. What I'm gonna try is, again, I'm gonna go and use my printer lights. And right there, if I just go before and after, and my blacks are looking great. Now we'll get this color in the sky back. that's gonna come back. But now this is looking good. We're right on the money. Now we can move on and add saturation in our image. And I want it to be really, really dramatic, okay? I want it to be really vibrant, really dramatic. So I'm just gonna go for it. So we're gonna pull it back a little bit, but like, I freaking like it. This is amazing. Now we get to decide what is the color of the sky that we want. So I'm gonna take my gain and I'm gonna move it up and over. Okay, I like it. I like that. And then to balance it out, because I feel like our red is coming up a little bit again, to balance it out, all you're gonna do is just take this and go in the opposite direction, and then take this and go in the opposite direction. Something like that, right? This is where we started. This is where we ended up with only 4 nodes. And look how clean this image is. Let's make it bigger. Move this over, get rid of this, and just look at it. And this is shot on the A7S, I believe. So this is a really clean image coming out of an 8-bit camera. Okay? And this is just still part of color correction. We're not getting crazy. And guys, this is the whole point of this. How can we get the most out of the least amount of work? And if you're saying, hey man, we're hitting our top right here, this is too much, then that's okay. All you need to do, instead of like affecting the whole thing, you can try doing a couple of things. One, we can just bring the gain down a little bit, and that will take care of it. And it looks nicer anyways. Another option would be, I'm going to create a new version. I'm going to get rid of this. In this version, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my hue saturation. I'm going to go to red and just bring it down a little, and look what happens. No. And in this version, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my highlights and I'm going to bring my highlights down a little. Boom. So now this one was with gain. We brought the gain down. This one is with highlights, and I like the highlights one better. Highlights is more controlled than our gain. Gain brings the entire thing down, if you recall our grayscale section, and highlights creates a really nice curve. I'm gonna create another version, and in this one we're gonna use our log wheels. So now if I bring it down, this is even more controlled. Now if I go back and look what I can do. I can just grab my range and bring it up around 7-ish, and now take my highlights and bring it down. I mean, I gotta be honest, out of these 3 versions, I'm just gonna have to go with highlights. The one that we use right here, using these highlights. And this is the name of the game. That's why I wanna show you all these different ways, so you can pick your poison, but I'm also gonna give you what I prefer the most, because you guys are here to learn. So I'm gonna be doing injustice if I'm just giving you a bipartisan like answer for everything, because that's just not my style. I'm gonna tell you what's the best for each situation that we're in. And this is highlights in here is the best tool to deal with situations like this, because we wanna keep the most juice, but then want to make sure that we are kosher when it comes to our scopes. And that's exactly what's happening with highlights, because if I go to my gain, I take out a lot of the the wow factor from my image. And then if I go to my log wheels, it's just too blah. Okay, so This is a winner in this shot. Let's move on. So let's play it through a couple of times. All right, so one thing that we might have to deal with is this moire that's happening right here, and this is shot with Mavic Pro 2, I believe. So let's get going. So we know what to do. This is, let's just say this is our subject. This is the main building. So all the focus is going to be on this, and I want to keep all the detail that's here, try to pull more if possible, take care of the moire, pop all these colors, the gold, the greens, and the red. And that's it. That's all we have to do. So we're going to start with leaving a node up there for noise reduction. With Mavic or with DJI, we noticed that their LUTs give you better results than CST. So I'm going to use one of the LUTs as my starting point. So this one is looking really good. This one is blowing out the sky a little bit. This one is looking really good. This one is okay. So let's just go between this or this. I like this. So that's going to be my starting point. Let's turn that off, come in here. And now what I want to do is I want to use my highlights to bring back this information instead of using my gain, because we learned in the last example that to preserve your highlights, this is a great tool. So let's do that. I'm going to keep it somewhere around here, and it's looking really, really good. You know, I'm okay with my shadows in this one. It's okay. I like them where they are. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lift my gamma a little bit. I'm going to bring this up, and then I'm going to take my highlights again and just bring them down somewhere around here. And just look at it up here. We were able to preserve quite a bit. Okay, now we're going to add contrast. We're going to give it a pop. Let's not worry about that. And plus there's a lot of fog in the image anyways, so we can also use that to our advantage. I'm going to take my lift and bring it down just a little. Something like that. Let's add a little bit of contrast right here. That's kind of cool. We're still keeping the detail in the back, so that's kind of nice. And okay, let's play it back. Now what I want to do is I want to make this my primary subject like we talked about. So I'm going to pull back on the contrast a little bit. This is better. Now what I'm going to do is let's create a vignette around this building. Something like that. Maybe make it something like that. And now just remember, Resolve likes a lot of softness, so we're going to do something like that. We're going to flip it, go in, and I'm going to pull everything around my building down like that. And then I'm going to create an outside node, and I'm going to give it a lot of juice. Okay, now let's play it back. So this is what I want to do. I want to go back in here. I want to go in here. What I want to do is I want to track that. Okay, I want to track it because I want it to just stick to this and not do anything else. And Resolve has an unbelievable tracker. It's right here next to the windows, and it's a 3D tracker, and it is just the best in the business. Just watch what happens. I'm gonna click this guy right here and then let it do its thing. And look, it's a 3D tracker, so it's tracking everything in a 3D space, and it's perfect. It's latched on, and we're done. We're done. This is how most of the stuff is gonna be. It's gonna be that simple. So now if I go here and look at what we created with these two nodes, just look at the emphasis that we're putting on our building, popping it out so much compared to everything else. And it's subtle enough where it doesn't stick out too much. Now let's attack the moire problem, and you guys are about to freaking love me for life, because just like I gave you the gift of noise reduction and how to perfectly use it, and nobody's doing it like that ever. I've never seen a single tutorial in my life for training that anyone has done it like that. I'm going to show you the same technique here, how to deal with Inspire or GoPro footage where we are dealing with moire that's this bad. And here's the trick. You go in here, you set this to better, you go in here and you set this to small because it's all in here, the small little patterns that are creating issues. And you take this, and in this case, I've already tried it. You got to crank it all the way to 100. And now watch this building that was giving us problem before. Actually, I'm going to play it before. So I'm going to turn this off and play it back. See all this? Now I'm going to stop, go back, turn it on, and play it again. So there's a little bit that comes in at the end, but just look at this. The early part. Look at this. And then with it on, look at that. Okay? Now you're not going to win every battle. You're not going to get rid of the whole thing. But we're getting rid of most of it. One thing that I'm noticing is that my green and my blues are lifted a little bit. I mean, I like this Tokyo look, but if you want to make it color corrected, like proper, then what I'm going to do is once again, we're going to go into our printer lights and I'm just going to bring down my green and my blue a little bit. Yeah, so that's looking better. I mean, we can see it right here too. Maybe I can bring up my green a little bit, something like that. And now the asphalt is looking proper. The building is looking good. And that little greenish blue tint that we had is gone. The sky is looking good. This is a pretty well balanced shot. We can see it right here too. And there you have it for the Mavic Pro. Before and after. Move on. This one is shot with Inspire 1. So let's watch it a couple of times and then we're going to go through it. Alright, so what I want to do is I want to make this the center of attention. This is the main thing. Even the cars are driving up to that point. So that's our focus. Now that we have that locked in, everything else, we're going to just pop the hell out of it and make it super juicy. And then I'm going to talk to you about problems that you get with drone footage a lot of the times. And one of the main problem is that anything that's in the distance, it starts to pick up a lot of blue cast. And I'm going to show you the best ways to remove that and keep your image pristine. So let's get going. We're going to do the same thing, noise reduction on 1, primaries on 2, LUT on 3, and we're going to use one of these LUTs. This is looking really good. This is the best one. Yep, so we're going to start off with this guy. And let's try to bring back some of our highlights. So let's go in here. That's it. We got our highlights back. I'm going to lift my gain to something like that. I'm going to bring my lift down to something like that. And let's see, our highlights are still preserved, so we're good there. Let's add some contrast, not too much. Something like that. This is where we started, this is where we are. It's looking really good. The colors are really good. One thing that I notice is that it's a little bit cooler overall because I'm looking at the rocks and I'm looking everywhere around here and it's just a little bit falling on the cool side. So we're going to warm it up. There's multiple different ways to warm it up. And what I'm going to do is this time I want to use gamma to warm it up, okay? Because it really is in the middle and in the lower mids where the coolness is happening. So I'm going to grab this, I'm going to take it towards yellow and then orange basically. Let's move this up. Okay, so that is looking really good. I'm gonna reset it and just keep your eyes on the asphalt right here on the road. Watch this. I'm gonna reset this. See? So if we reset the color, just now you can see how much blue is here. And if we go back, you can see how much we pulled out. Now I want to dial it back and just kind of find a happy medium because we might have gone just a bit too far. So I'm going to pull it back a little bit. My eyes are on the asphalt. And this is looking really, really well balanced. And I'm happy with that. I'm really happy with that. Now the focus is right here. Okay, so what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and create a vignette. And always when you create vignettes, just be generous and always give it a shape. So I want to do like I want to give it this shape right here, and always just tilt it a little bit so it looks natural. And we're going to do the same thing that we always do, and then pull everything down, not that much, somewhere around here. And now we're going to create an outside and pull it out. That's good. Now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to track this. Watch what happens. Watch the magic. It just latched on. Just look at this dot. Boom. Doesn't go anywhere. So now we did that. And let's take these two. Just look at how much impact we're making. It's absolutely unreal. Now, on to that problem that I was talking about, which is this blue that gets added. There's so much of it. To get rid of it is easy. There's so many ways we can go about it. So one thing would be to go under hue versus saturation, pick out your blue, and just bring it down. So even something like that, like just look at it, it's taking out blue from all the shadows and making it nice and gray. And that fixed a lot of the problems. Like look, it just brought out the reds and gave us so much more detail. So we play it back and it looks great. I'm gonna save this version. I'm gonna reset this and I'm gonna show you another way to do it. So now we're gonna go under saturation versus saturation, and we're basically gonna pick out the lowest saturation areas and we're gonna pull it down. And then if we like it here, then we can start bringing back everything else. We can bring back everything else. So that's two. Although I don't really love what it's doing to my rocks in here. It depends on the taste. But another thing that I can do to fix that is, actually, you know what? I don't like this at all. I'm gonna take this back. So another way to attack it would be, let's try it with our luminance versus saturation and grab the top parts and bring it down, and then give the juice back to our image. So yeah, that's much better, I feel like. So this is taking care of the highlights and taking out this gunky purplish blue thing that's happening there. So it's making it very natural and clean. And then our other method where we did hue versus saturation was taking out the saturation out of the shadows, and we can always do mix and match. So now I can go in here, I can grab my blues and I can pull it down. So now we did both of these things in this one node. So we pulled down our highlights and got rid of this crummy stuff that was happening right here, and then we gone ahead and we pulled down our blue hue from our shadows. So let's look at before and after. I'm gonna bypass the entire image And now let's bring in our grade. And guys, just remember, for color correction, you're seeing how I'm keeping my nodes and how I'm keeping everything very simple. And that's the key to the most pristine image. As soon as you get in and start creating all these crazy points everywhere on your curve, it might look really impressive for a freeze frame, but as soon as you're gonna play it back, you're gonna see so many artifacts, it's gonna be insane. But just look at the images that I'm working on. I can make them full screen for you and in 4K and play it back and just look how it looks. This might as well be shot with Alexa Mini. So this is the name of the game. With color correction, a lot of the times, once you know how to play the game, a little is gonna go a long way. We have one more shot in landscape, and then we're gonna move on to our next category. So let's do this. We got this guy. Again, you know the deal. We're gonna go under scaling and we're gonna make it fit. And now we're ready to jump in. Now I believe the best results we were getting from on the GH5 was from color transform. So we're gonna do that. We're gonna drop this in. We're gonna go to Panasonic V Gamut. Vlog, Rec 709, Rec 709, luminance mapping, saturation, and we are off to a good start. Everything is looking great. Let's do a playback. This is great. So this is so gentle, and I love Panasonic. The image is so good. It's just such a clean image. No moire. Color separation is great. The 10-bit image just gives you so much information. Now we're looking at this, and I'm gonna go, you know what? I love it where it's at. I'm gonna give it saturation. I'm gonna dial it back a little bit. Okay, what else do we have to do? Let's bring my lift down a little bit. Bring it up. Somewhere around here. What about my gain? Let's bring it up a little bit. Somewhere around here. That's a pretty good pop. Let's take my gamma, bring it down a little. Let's take my gain, bring it up. Okay. That's looking pretty nice, and the colors are looking really good. Now I'm looking at my white right here, and this should look white, but it's a little bit on the bluer side, so I feel like we need to fix our white balance. And then I'm gonna take my gamma and just level it out. And then what I want to do is just balance out my bottom, because I feel like it's a little bit blue heavy. So I'm just gonna take my lift and I'm just gonna move it around until I feel like everything is in place. All right, that's looking much better. That's looking good. So now what I want to do is create a vignette, and just, this is obviously our subject, so we're gonna create a window like that, extend it, and make it something like this. Actually, you know what? I'm gonna go like that. Something like this. And now let's go and add softness. Reverse it, go in here, curves. That's kind of cool. And now let's create an outside node. Didn't mean to do that. Outside node. pop it. We don't need to pop it too much because it already has a lot of information there. I just made everything brighter and less contrasty in the middle, and then I'm going to give it some saturation to make up for that saturation loss. Something like that. And then if I take these two and just reset it, you can see how much we're adding in there. And now what I want to do with this shot is I want to create one more node, and here I do want to do something fun, and that would be hue versus hue. And I pretty much want to take this color right here and change it to something else. Okay, so I'm going to go in here and I'm going to show you what's going to be happening. So you see this? I'm going to take it into a little bit more on the cyan side. Now what else we can do is we can just choose blue and then go and I like that. And if we want to restrict this so it doesn't spill over right here, it's really easy. We can just do this, and then if we look at the shot, we just know that it's not gonna spill through, and then our bottom is gonna stay the same, and we're just changing the top color, and it's super subtle. So let me make this big and let's analyze this shot. And this is our last shot in landscape. And the story is going to be the same. Meaning if you ever feel like, okay, this is too much saturation, like I don't know how I feel about it, blah, blah, blah. You can always go in and just dial back your saturation in the global adjustment node and then turn it on and off and see how you feel about it. Or you can make changes to individual colors by using hue versus saturation. I'm gonna leave the saturation in as is and I'm gonna play it through. And once again, if you're watching Survivor or one of these reality shows, this is what you're getting, and it looks really juicy, it looks really good. Once again, this is what the bread and butter is. This is what's gonna pull you a lot of money. And you're going to be doing this day in and day out, and having a good sense, having a macro on how to approach each show or each shot individually can save you tons of time, which is going to make you come off really professional. This is going to take you really far in your color grading career. So guys, this was landscape, the first part of color correction module, and now we're going to go ahead and attack people and all things skin tones. So let's jump right in. All right, moving on to all things products. As much as it's important to understand how to work with skins, you also got to understand how to make products juicy, desirable, sellable, and all that other good stuff. So the main objective is pop, and then for this particular shot, I also brought in the actual image to match the colors, because a lot of the times this is what would happen. A client will give you a JPEG or Photoshop file of the actual colors, so then you can get right in there and match those. Let's get right into it. I'm gonna start off with this guy, and this was shot with Alexa Mini. So we're gonna build our grade off of the LUT. That's what we're gonna do. So I'm gonna create another node, and this is my noise reduction. My primary is my LUT. And let's go ahead and grab that LUT, drop it in, and we're pretty much there. At that point, what I want to do is I just want to take my gamma and bring it down a little. I feel like it's a little bit too on the magenta bluish side, so we'll just take it in the opposite side a little bit, something like that, just to get some of that magenta out in here. And this is looking much better. more neutral. And at that point, what we can do is create another node, and let's do a vignette, and let's just say this is our hero right here. So we're going to do something like that, soften it out quite a bit. I'm going to reverse it, go back in here, do my vignetting here like that, and then create an outside, pop it, and then what I want to do is I want to track that. Let's get back in here and then track it forward. That's good. And then I want to track it from here back. Let's try it again. That's pretty good. That's a pretty locked on track. So let's see what we did in these two. I think it looks pretty believable. It looks pretty good. We can give it a little bit more lift. Bring up the gamma a little bit. And then even for this section, we can just bring the lift up a little bit. And to me, this looks pretty good, right? We know that our clients are going to be really happy. Now, one thing that we can do is, I'll show you. So we're just going to take this a step further. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go under my curves, and we're going to go into our hue versus saturation. And I just want to pull this side. So I think this is going to be in yellow. And I want to pull that and just give it a little bit more juice. So just look at that right there. And we just made it just a little bit brighter. And now what I want to do is I want to create a parallel node, and I want to bring the background, everything just down just a touch. So what I want to do is I want to go under my luminance versus saturation, and I want to bring that down a little bit, not too much. So something like that. So just look at it. Like now we're really putting all the emphasis on the product right in the center. So if I were to go here, turn all of these off and just create a version with this, and then grab everything else and turn it on. And let's do a comparison. Make it full screen. Move this over. Just check it out. So just with a little bit, I mean, this is not necessarily a grade. We just neutralized it and made everything look proper, and popped our subject, and just look at the difference. Looks so much better. There's so much color separation. There's so much contrast saturation, and just overall it pops, and our eyes go straight right here. Whereas here, my eyes kind of go here and then wander back here, and then there's so much color in the back. They kind of go all over the place. Whereas here, I'm just locked in. So that's one shot. And we tracked our window and all that good stuff. So, okay, great. Now moving on to our second shot. And this is also shot with Alexa, and it's kind of a little bit on the dark side, so we might have to do some noise reduction. So first note, always noise reduction, primaries, and then our LUT. Drop in Alexa's LUT. And I like it. I just don't like how aggressive it is. So let's go in here and start bringing back some of that information. So almost like I just want to take the edge off the contrast, right? So I'm just going to bring this up a little bit, and then I want to do more with my gamma in this one. So I want to do something like that. I want to bring this down a little bit, but then I want to bring this up, give it a little bit more color, and see what happens. something like that. And then the rest is looking good. I mean, there is a little bit of a green in the back, but because it was lit with green light. So honestly, you know that the white balance is proper because look at the wall. That's the color of the wall. But if we want to take it up a notch, we can obviously just always select our dude, tilt this a little, grab them like that, create a vignette, and then flip it, go back. I mean, I don't want to go too much, so I'm going to just keep it subtle and then go to our dude. And let's see, what do we need? So pop them a touch, not too much, just something like that. And then we obviously have to track this, so go in here, track it back, come in here, track it forward, and we're good with tracking. Let's see what these two are doing. Okay, so it puts a little bit more emphasis on him. I'm liking what's happening here. It's very subtle. Before, after. So, but it's shot with Alexa. So I mean, Alexa's image is so clean that you don't necessarily need a noise reduction. But if you really want to use it, it's right here. I would just do something light. So I'll do like 6-ish here, and then I would go and take out the chroma, the digital noise. And if I go in here and show you before and after, let's do before, and we see all this noise, and then after, and it's gone. When you got an image like that and everything is there, then just move on, you're good. Moving on to the next shot. This is also shot with Alexa. So a couple of things here, we just want to make sure that we keep all the detail in our highlights here, and then along with that, we just got to pop our wine, and the rest of the shot will fall into place. So we're going to start off with our noise reduction, then primaries, then LUT. Let's drop in RE LUT, and it's clipping the top a little bit, so we got to bring that back. I'm going to go to my first node and create a parallel node. Now I'm going to bring this down, and I'm going to recover my highlights like that. So now that my highlights are recovered, I'm going to go back into this node, bring up my gamma, make the scene poppy and fun, and then balance it out. Like right now, look at the reds. They're going crazy. So I'm going to grab my gamma and just bring it down. Now I know that this scene probably is lit with tungsten, so we got to kind of keep that in mind. So we don't get too crazy, because this whole scene is lit by tungsten lights. And I want to raise my gamma more, maybe bring my highlights down a little, or my gain down a little, lift my gamma up. And then let's do some contrast. And then let's give it some color. So I'm going to do some saturation. So this is where we are. And I'm going to park it here for now. And then let's just move on, create another node. And now what I want to do is I want to create a vignette. And I want this vignette to be like that. Something like this. And then I want to soften it. And I want to pop my champagne out. So something like this, and then let's track it. And then let's add noise reduction because I can just see visible noise. I can punch in and have you guys see it too. So there's a lot of noise because it was sort of like a dark image. Like look at where it was sitting and now where we are. So I'm gonna go in and apply proper noise reduction. And then this is what's really gonna clean it up. So before, after, night and day, and I'm sure at this point you guys are not surprised. You guys know what to expect. So we were able to pop our wine quite a bit. It's looking really good. And now the only thing that's not looking good is their skin. So I'm gonna go in here and grab their skin really fast. Just grab the skin and then add a lot of blur. And now what I want to do is just give it a proper color. And then I want to create a parallel node, and I want to grab this area, just looking super crummy on his hand, and focus on just give it a lot of blur, and then just pull the saturation and also move it to like that. And then I want to restrict it, so I want to create a window so I'm only affecting this area, and then I want to give it some softness. But let's watch it through. And then you know what, I also need to track it because I don't want it to go, I want it to go away. So anytime you run into an issue like that where the track is not following what you want it to follow, you got to do this. You got to just change it to frame right here, and then look, there's a little red dot, which means it's recording and it's live. So now what I can do is I can go here and I can move it out of the way completely. And now watch, it's going to track back to his hand when his hand comes in. And then other than that, it's going to be completely out. We're going to keep it out. And now it comes in when his hand comes in. So we manually rotoed it pretty much frame by frame, but if you know anything about rotoing, it's that the least amount of frames is the best option. You don't want to have too many frames. So we were able to do this before and after, so that's looking really good. If I just take out everything and just leave the LUT on, and then let's save it, and then let's go and turn everything on and look at the two versions, we can see that we were able to pull a lot out of it. Our subject, in this case wine, we were able to pull it out quite a bit. We were able to keep even more information than what we have here, and we pretty much turned it from like a horror movie scene into a pretty fun scene. And then we can take it a step further, right? Like, I mean, if we still want to just keep playing with it and make it, give it extra pop, we can do that. Like, we can bring up the entire image like that and just really let it sit up there. And in this node, we can bring the highlights down more and keep more information in, you know, as much as possible. But here you have it. You know, if you want to just give it more pop, now if we look at before and after, it's a huge difference. So that's your LUT only, and then this is what we created. and we're still sustaining, like I said, a lot of it in. A lot of the information is restored, and we can see the delicious wine. So moving on to the next shot. This was a fun little project. It was for my wife's YouTube channel. She wanted to do a video on Christmas Village, and this particular cheese grill is from her brother. So I loved it, and I was just getting some B-roll for her, and I got carried away and ended up spending way too much time doing it, but I'm glad that this shot ended up making it in my masterclass. So just a little backstory. Okay, so I'm looking at this. This is the subject. A blind person can see that. This is our thing, the grilled cheese truck. This is what we gotta pop out of everything else. Besides that, it's looking pretty even. It's looking pretty good. We can definitely raise the red a little bit and bring the blue down just a hair. And let's go do just that. So first is going to be noise, second is going to be primary, third is going to be LUT, and let's go and apply Canon LUT. And let me see which one it's going to take. Is it going to be, nope, it's going to be this guy right here, C-Log 3. So we applied C-Log 3, and now what we want to do is preserve some of the highlights. So I'm going to go in here, I'm going to pop this back. Just keep as much as possible in there because it's white, and then raise my gamma up a little, and then bring highlights down around here, and then let's just bring my lift down and then up a little. So this is looking pretty good. And now what I want to do is, again, like, just want to balance it out. So I'm going to take my gamma and move it over toward green and yellow. So something like that. I mean, see how much magenta was in there before, and now we're balancing it out, and it's looking pretty good. Now don't get confused by the vector scopes here, because I have it set to 2x, because if I do this, which is normal, like all the colors are good, we're kosher. So this is where we are right now. If we want to make it less dirty and just add a little bit more blue, we can certainly do that, something like that. Something like this, but even this is better than that. So we're getting a lot of color separation already popping in, and at this point I can go ahead and start making some changes. So I can create another layer, and then let's just start with the vignette. And same thing is happening. We just have to go to power window and for it to show up, and let's make it a little bit bigger like that, and then just exaggerate it like that, flip it, do an outside, and then pop it. And then let's track it, since this shot has a pan movement. So we're gonna do that, and then go forward. And the track is super simple because the shot is just pretty easy. And what this just puts the emphasis in the right place. And that to me is, we're there. I mean, it's just there. Like, you can turn this in and have people be very, very happy with this. So at this point, I don't know what else we can do to it. Maybe I can make the snow whiter, and the way I can do that is I would just go in here and saturation versus saturation, and we'll just go and grab low sat parts and bring it down, and then keep everything else in there, you know. So even something like that. So now what we were able to do, if you pay attention to even the bottom of the truck and just see what's happening, there's some blue cast going on a little bit there, a little bit here, and we were just able to pull that out quite a bit, and it just makes it look cleaner. And then same thing with the snow, like there's a little, you know, bluish tint going on, and then with that it just makes it pure white, makes it really crisp and clean. And that's the thing with snow, like you just want it to be like super crisp and clean. So I'm gonna create a version here, and then what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna get rid of all of them and just leave the LUT one on, and then let's do a before and after. So this time our LUT is on the right and our look is on the left, and you can just see how much information we're preserving and then how much pop we're giving it. And we were able to take out all this bluish magenta in the shadows, and we properly balanced our image. Then we were able to clean up our whites for the snow, and we were able to successfully create enough color separation. Like if you just look at the colors here and look at the colors here, like we can just identify each color. And that is the Christmas village shot redone. Moving on to the next shot. So this one is a product shot. If you're working on a spot, you're going to be given a product to pop in and then match the colors to make sure that you're on the right track. This is shot with C200, so we're going to do the same thing. So the first one is going to be noise reduction. Moving on, primaries, LUT, and then in here I'm going to drop in my LUT. That is the right LUT, and it's pretty, wow, pretty flat even after the LUT. So now what I'm going to do is go in here and start giving it juice. I'm going to go ahead and lift my gain, keep it somewhere around here. I'm going to bring my lift down around here. My eyes are right here. I don't want to lose all this information. And with gamma we can just see somewhere around here. This is looking good. And then let's just give it some saturation. And now let's pop this image in and see where we're at. We're actually really close. So the things that we do have to change is this, and we have to add more brown than this magenta red that's going on. And then we're just gonna have to do the same thing here. We're just gonna have to dial it back like the purple and make it a little bit lighter and a bit more on the purple side than the blue side that we got going on here. So pretty self-explanatory. And then the same thing is happening right here. So first, I think what I should do is I should do a global change, which would be so the reason why I'm using offset is because offset kind of moves everything together. And a lot of the times in a situation like that, if we're just trying to match one color, it might put everything in the right place. And in this example, it's getting close, but it's not doing just that. But like if we go before and after, we're getting somewhere, and we'll take care of all of this in a minute once we are in the right ballpark. So now what I can do is I can take my lift and I can bring it down to even it out, something like that. And I can pop it open and I can see that, okay, there is some difference now. And then let's make up for that difference. I'm gonna add some contrast here and raise this baby up, and then add some more contrast to start giving it the same sort of thing that we got going on here. All right, so we're starting to see something. We're starting to see something. Okay, so this is not bad at all. Now I'm gonna start working on the problems, like the red is not looking this red, so let's fix it. And it's pretty simple. What we have to do is go under here, hue versus saturation, or actually hue versus hue. We're gonna select our red. And now it's looking like the right red. And just by getting the red right, we started to pull everything, all of this, in the right ballpark too. It still needs some work, but we're getting there now. Yep. So we're already getting there. Now if I were to pull yellow and then take that down, okay, so let's just look at this. Okay, before, look at these two. Let me just make this bigger a little bit, and then after. Okay, so that's a huge difference. And now if we go into hue versus saturation and we pull our blue, we can pull it down. And I think more than that, actually, let me go in here and grab my blue and then switch it toward this, and then go in here and pull it down. So the color is looking good, but it's a bit too dark, and that's just the theme with a lot of this. So I think the easy way to pull that out would be when we create our vignette. And I want to do a different kind of vignette. I want to show you this, okay? So I'm gonna do this. And this time we can be pretty tight. And we're just gonna track it first. So watch what happens. Tracking it back. Didn't do a terrible job. And now tracking it forward. So we have to manually do some work. So I'm just gonna come in here and I'm gonna start adding some points. And then come in here. Come in here and do that. And always do middle and then each sides, front and back, and see if that does the trick. A lot of the times that will do the trick, like it did in here. And now what I want to do is go ahead and give it some softness. So I'm going to go up to like 5-ish. Okay, so now what I want to do is bring the lift up. Bring the lift up. It's okay. I want to pop this open and see it next to my image, and then I want to give it contrast. Alright, so let's lift the gamma a little bit. And then what I would do is, instead of creating, I mean, we can try creating an outside from that and see what happens, but this might be a bit too extreme. what I want to do is, instead of this, I want to create just an organic sort of shape like that, and then I want to give it enough softness and then track it. Now I want to go outside and then I want to pull some saturation out of it to like really make it crisp and poppy. And then we go in here and look at how everything is looking in here. And we've done a lot of adjustment to get it right in the ballpark. Our red is looking proper. I mean, I personally feel like we can do a little bit more with our red. We can, let's go under hue versus hue and go under red. Maybe we gotta pop it a little, so I'm gonna go in hue versus saturation and then pull it out a little bit like that. And our brown is almost exactly the same. And purple is looking great. And now if I turn this on and off, you can see how close we came. And that would be our product. And one thing I don't like is here, like there's a little magenta happening in here. So what I can do is I can go on this layer and I can go under luminance versus saturation, and I'm just gonna pull this down, and that takes care of that. Now another thing that I'm noticing is that you can notice that too, is that there's a lot of noise in here now. So if I play it back, like look at this noise. So let's take care of it through our classic techniques. We're gonna do it the softer way first, and if that doesn't work, then we're gonna go hard. So that took care of it. Now if I just move back, play it. Before and after, and then let's do our thing. Turn all of this off, turn this on. This is with just a LUT. That's with everything. Let's put it next to each other, make it bigger, play it back. So that is for matching a product. And now we're moving on to our last shot, Brussels sprouts. We gotta make it edible, and it's not gonna be too hard because it looks delicious already. So what I'm gonna do is noise reduction, primaries LUT, and let's drop in our LUT. And from this point on, let's raise the whole thing. I'm going to use my offset to kind of bring it up here, and then I'm going to use my gain to pop it even more. I'm going to use my lift to bring it down. Keep it somewhere around there. Lift my gain up a little bit more. Start adding some contrast. Raise the contrast so we can see more detail in the Brussels sprouts. Okay. Go easy on the contrast a little bit. Okay, we've come a long way. Let's give it some saturation. Now this is the trick that I want to show you. Okay. Let's not even do saturation on this one. I'm going to show you this trick right here. If I were to add saturation, it is obviously a global saturation, so it's just adding saturation on the entire image, which is fine. What I don't like is how it affects somewhat of the bowl. Okay, I want that to be crispy, clean, white. If I turn that off, if I just reset the node and I go to my color boost, look what happens. If I raise that, add more color boost, it does even way more than that to my overall image. Look at right here, how it's going from white to this green gunk. So what I've discovered is that if you're gonna crank the saturation, let me just crank some saturation and just give it some juice. Then you gotta go in to your color boost and subtract. And look how it keeps your bowl pristine white. Look at what it's doing. But then it's keeping the color in here. So I'm gonna go back in my saturation and I'm gonna boost it. Now I'm gonna go back into my color boost and just look what it's doing. That's a little trick. You can add a ton of pop in your colors and then take out this residual, this thing that just makes your whites kind of dirty, and you can pull that out by subtracting your color boost. So that's one trick. And then another thing we're going to do to even accentuate it more is going to be obviously going in here. And what I like to do is I like to take my greens and make them like deep forest situations. So first we can give it some boost, that's fine. Now I want to go back into my green and then start giving it that foresty green instead of yellow green, so I want to just add that. I'm gonna exaggerate it to show you what is really happening, and then I'm gonna pull it back so you can see what's happening. And you know what, I'm not the biggest fan of this yellow too much, so I'm gonna take this and kind of pull it down. Go easy on it. And then I'm gonna go back to my green and raise it. Make it more foresty. And then what I want to do, so it's already looking super crisp, super clean. And now I just want to create a vignette, pretty much the shape of this bowl. And then I want to add tons of softness, turn it around, track it. Doing a phenomenal job tracking it. And then I want to pull everything down just a touch. Something like that. Then let's go to outside. And what I want to do is I want to recover some of these highlights. So I'm going to use that and then keep pushing my contrast, because that is doing a lot, okay? So now if I do a playback, I mean, I like it. I like it. I can also always go back and just take it easy on the saturation a little bit, but the way I would do that would be sat versus sat or luma versus sat, and I can just take this down a notch, something like that. But this is how I would wrap this up. So I mean, super clean, so crisp, makes you want to eat it. And let's do the same thing we always do. Let's just save a version with the LUT only. And let's look at that, saving it. And now I'm gonna pull everything up and pull it up here, make it full screen, move that over, and that's just with the LUT, and that is what we created. Color correction version. And I showed you how to keep your whites crisp, and after adding the pop in there, and then we did some more control in terms of saturation and the latitude where the saturation lives. And this was our last shot in the products. And now we're moving on to how to color correct Rec 709 footage. So this lesson is more important than you think. There's so many times I'm working on a show where the look was somewhat baked in, or they just shot it in Rec 709 and they want me to come in and touch it up and just balance everything out and add some juice. They're just looking for pure color correction. So this section is a perfect candidate for that. So I picked out all these shots that are Rec 709 and they were shot like that, and we're gonna go in, we're just gonna color correct them and just fix them up as much as we can. So this shot I can easily tell by looking at it, even without looking at the scopes, that it's very much on the blue side, and we can see right here in our waveform, just look what's happening, and it's just completely off. Like, look at the blues right here. So we have to get that back in. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna park right here, but I'm gonna use my keyboard and I'm gonna use my printer lights to get that dialed in. So I'm gonna bring my blue down. I'm bringing my blue down. And somewhere around here is where I wanna park. Maybe somewhere around here. And right there, look at this, where he lives. We were able to white balance this out. Now on here, if it's a little bit on the bluer side, that's okay, because this looks like it's a sunset. We can leave it somewhere around here for color correction purposes. So this is looking good. And now what we can do is just pop him out. So I'm gonna go in and create a window, create a vignette around him, and make it something general like that, and just twist it a little, soften it up quite a bit, flip it, go in here and pull it down quite a bit, and then I'm going to create an outside. Now that's going to determine on what do you really want to do. Do you want to pop him out, or do you want to keep one side of his face dark? So that's going to be up to you. I'm going with this, and since he's our main character, I want to give him as much light as possible. So we're going to just leave it on that, and then if I do before and after, you can see the difference. So much more detail that's coming in, and even you can see it here, and we're able to preserve quite a bit. I mean, honestly, I don't know what else you do with this shot, you know? If we're going for color correction, this is corrected, and the emphasis is where it's supposed to be, and we're ready to move on to the next shot. Skin is right in the ballpark. We can see it right here. I don't think the skin needs any work. This is perfect. So we're moving on. This shot, I think, will definitely need some work. It just feels like there's a green cast on the entire image. So let's start with lifting the gain a little, not too much, and then bringing the lift down, and then we can raise the gamma up a little bit, bring the gain down somewhere around here, and then let me pull the green out of it a little bit. So I'm going to move it towards magenta. Anytime you're trying to figure out what it needs, push it a bit far so you can land where you need to be. And you always got to kind of go extreme, go the other route, and then pull it back. So this is not looking too bad, but I'm just going to keep moving this wheel around until I'm satisfied. I know the horse is white, so as long as I keep him in that world, we're going to be looking good. And the thing that I just don't really dig in this shot is that everything is very saturated. So I think that is my main problem with this shot. So I want to go in here and maybe pull some saturation out of the green. It's just a bit much. So I'm going to go in here. Or you know what? Let me try this. I think this is looking better. And then maybe I can give it saturation and just keep pulling and see what that does. So I want to pull that a little bit more. Okay, now what I want to do is I actually do want to move the gamma a little bit on the warmer side. So something like that. I mean, I think it's looking much better than what we started with. I'm going to create a new node, and in this one I'm just going to go into hue versus saturation, and I'm going to pull my green down a little bit just to get a little bit more sting out of this. Like, I feel like it was still pretty strong. So now we're getting somewhere. If I do a before and after, it's not too bad. There's no focal point, so I'm just going to create a vignette. And we're going to create something like this, and I'm going to rotate it like that. And maybe extend it a little bit more, raise it a little bit more, and now soften it. Flip it, and then let's see. And let's create an outside. What I'm going to do is I'm going to bring my highlights down because I definitely don't want the highlights to be blown out. So I'm going to do something like that. And then let me grab these two and turn them on and off. So now we're definitely putting more emphasis there. And then I want to like suck the color out of it a little bit more. And let me see if I have to track it. Maybe I do, so I'm just gonna go ahead and do it anyways. Alright, that's good. And then let's go back here, play it through. So for a shot like this, I feel like we're good here. And now if we want to do more, we can just take the green and just switch it to make it look like something else. But then we're entering into the color grading territory. So I would just park it here. If I look at my horse, it looks black as it's supposed to. If I'm looking at their skins are looking good. And nothing is blown out, everything is in control, you know. So that's color corrected with maybe just a hint of style because we were bringing down the color boost and we were raising the saturation, but it's there, it's good. Moving on. This one, absolutely red bias, a lot of red and blue, so we're gonna have to pull that out. The bottom looks pretty well balanced, so we don't have to touch that. And if it's just the midtones that we have to adjust, so in that case, I'm just going to take this and I'm going to start bringing it down and I'm going to start moving it over. So I mean, this is starting to look pretty good. Yeah, that's starting to look really good. So just look at the color of the sand. It looks proper. Horse is looking white. The blacks are black. This is looking pretty good. It's high noon. I mean, just look at where the sun is. So in this situation, the contrast is, it's good. You know, you can leave the contrast as is. One more thing that I would do is I would pull some pink out of the sky. If you want to, you don't have to, but if you want to, you can just bring it down a touch, and there you go. I think it's pretty well balanced at this point. Started from this, landed right here, and the thing that you got to remember with Rec 709 stuff is that don't overdo it. Just fix what needs to be fixed and move on. I mean, this looks good, and that was super simple. This is where we were, this is what we did, and we did it very easily because we knew exactly where the problem was. The problem was not in the highlights, the problem was not in the shadows, it was in the gamma. We corrected it really fast with one node. Moving on. This needs a couple of things. Let's park it on a hero frame. So I would say this is good. So the number one thing is let's bring the highlights back. So I would park it somewhere around here. So now we're getting some detail back, not a lot, but some. So that's a good starting point. Now what I want to do is in this shot, I definitely want to isolate their skins and just give it a little bit more juice. But before we get there, let's fix the color balance. So you can see the blue and green are more lifted than the red. So let's fix that. And I think we can do that right here with our lift. So we can adjust it something like that, and it adds some green. Don't worry about it, we're gonna fix it with our gamma. So I'm gonna try to balance that out, and it's looking much better. Just look at her skin and just look at the blue that was there before, and it's starting to balance out quite a bit, and we can see that right here as well. So at this point I would just like bring the lift down a little bit just to give it a little bit more contrast. So this is looking fine. I would bring my gamma down because I feel like there's just something like that. So now it's, the skins are looking good. Like this is before, this is after. So we're getting that information out. Now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna work on each person individually. So we're gonna start with our hero right here. So I'm gonna select her skin, and best part to select the skin from is the forehead. So just go ahead, swipe it, and I want to keep it isolated. I just want to keep it on her. So I'm gonna expand it. Actually, I'm gonna reduce that a little bit, move it around to get the full skin. This is better, and then something like that. Add. And then this time I'm just going to create a custom shape. I know she doesn't really get out of this area, so as long as I have a shape created like this, garbage mat, and then soften it a little bit, I should be fine. So let's look at it. So yeah, I will be fine. And now I can just go ahead and look at where she is. Her skin is looking good right here, you can see, but I'm just going to go ahead and give it a little bit more juice. This is where we were, this is where we are. Just lift it a little bit. I think it was needed. So just look at this area, and now look at the hand, and now chest. I mean, you know, she just popped out a little bit, and I think that gives her some life. And then what I want to do is I want to even it out. So I'm going to do the trick that we used earlier. So I'm going to keep it around 30 and just look how it softens everything. And then what I want to do is just give her a little bit more love, bring her up a little bit, So this is where we started. This is where we are. Everything is very even and nice. And now one more thing that I'm going to show you is right here. Just go to glow, and you can drop a glow on there, and it's one of my favorite tools to use. And just look what it does. Like, a little goes a long way. If I turn it off, just look at her face, turn it on. It's just doing so little, but it's just so subtle, and just look at that. So it adds a really nice glow. So I will leave that on. So that's her. Now I'm going to create a parallel node. This is going to be for her. And we're going to go ahead and grab her skin right here. And I'm going to go ahead and I'll try to grab as much as I can. So this is better. Something like that. And then I'll just add a lot of blur, and I'm gonna go in. Actually, I'm gonna add that, and then let's play it through. So this is looking pretty good. I'm gonna hold it here, and then let's look at where she's sitting. So definitely needs some juice. She's definitely paler than her, so we're gonna respect that. So that was before, this is after. It's just, it gives it more life, you know, and that's what's important. And I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm just gonna even everything out. And you can see what's happening there. It's helping out quite a bit. I'm also going to add glow, and it's not necessarily a beauty shoot, so we don't have to go too far with that, but just look at our two actors in the front. We did quite a bit of work, and it just works. Like, it doesn't, there's nothing funky about it besides the one thing that I just noticed, which is this part of her hand. So we have to clean that up, and let's just do that. So I'm gonna do this, grab my plus and start adding these parts, and then I don't want to add everything, so I'm gonna so now her arm is way more even. So this is looking much better. It even grabs more of her skin right there. So just look at the difference. It's insane. And then her, same thing, just enough to give it some juice. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create another parallel node, and that's going to be for our dude in the back. So let's punch in on him. So one thing you got to remember, anytime you do that, if it's set to plus, it's not going to change on its own. So you're going to have to go back here, and now we select that, and I'm going to get rid of that. That's a pretty nasty selection. So what I would do to help with this would be that, like, I would just like literally restrict it only to his face, not even his arms, only to his face, and just keep it right there. And now let's pull him out. let's track him, so it's going to be easy regardless of if he moves or not. And now let me just get rid of that. Look at it, play it back. So I mean, that's a lot of work right there, right? So if I just turn these three off and go back, and if you just look at it, so this is before, this is after, and how much work we're doing. And it's clean because I'm playing it back and there's nothing iffy going on. And this is the work that we've done. Doesn't seem a lot, but you saw when I was doing it, there was a lot of different techniques we were using. We made our ladies look angelic, and we made our dude pop out from the background because he was just literally lost in there. And it's all about the story. So everything that we did here helped the story, put the focus where we're supposed to be focusing, and that's what this was about. And you know, some might say that I might have pushed her a little too far, and that's my hero. So I did that because I worked on projects like this where this is what needed to be done, and that's what they asked for. And when they saw it, they flipped because they were just so stoked. In this shot, it's actually lit in this lighting, so there's not necessarily anything wrong with the way it looks, although it looks like the balance is not there, but this is exactly how it was shot. But for something like that, if you want to balance it out, again, you can start with your printer lights right here, because we see that the red is just super biased and like really up there, so we can start bringing that down, and then we can start raising blue, and then we can just see something like that. Basically what we need to do is go in log and pull the blue down. So this is pretty much like we are getting it in the ballpark, like if you quote unquote want to call it balance. But honestly, I like how it was set up. But now if you look at the back right here, this looks white, so we're balancing it out. This is what it should look like if it's balanced. I really like the contrast on this, how it's set up. It's lit properly, so I don't even think you really need to do much. But if you are inclined to do something to it, then it's gonna start right here. We're gonna create a vignette around his face. You can even just broaden it a little bit, push it, flip it, go here, bring everything else down just a tad, go to the outside node, something like that, give them that little pop, and then let's track it. So tracking, boom boom boom, does a really good job, we know that. If I go before and after, now we're putting really nice emphasis on him. This is before, this is after, the focus is him. And let me just go and create one more thing. So another thing that I will tell you, whether you're color correcting or you're grading, that's just a little secret. The thing that I use is this offset wheel, under primaries wheel. So I take this and I start going crazy. I start like kind of going in circle to see if there's something that I go, oh, this is really cool. And then once I find that this is very cool, I can balance out this image, because now I can go, okay, so this is where I want it. Now if I go in my log wheels, I can start balancing everything out like I am right now. And then I have this really cool look. Now I can go into my primaries and I can go into my gamma and just start adding some more warmth if I want. But that look that I was able to create would have never came to me if I wasn't, I'm gonna balance out my greens. This look would have never came to me if I wasn't doing what I just did, like where I just started moving my offset around and then found a spot where I was like, okay, this is kind of cool, I'm gonna go with that. But again, this is outside the scope of color correction, but I just wanted to give you an example, and obviously now our skin is a little bit off and we don't want that. So in that case, we're gonna pull it back to where the skin is looking somewhat in that ballpark. This is where we started, this is where we are. Obviously this one was sort of like a look, but if we turn that off, this is where we started, this is where we are. Focus is on him, white balance is good, we're moving on, and we're ready to go. This one you can take it or leave it, but this is what we got. Starting point, end point. And guys, this was the last shot in Rec 709, so you got to see, like, you don't recreate something if you don't need to. Rec 709 footage can be easy to work with if you just literally attack what's ahead of you and keep chugging along. A lot of the times when you're going to get Rec 709 look is because they really want to turn it around right away, and they don't have the luxury or the time to give you weeks to work on it. And not to mention that you just don't have a lot of room to play with. So having color correction skills come in handy big time when you're working with Rec 709, because you don't lose your mind trying to recreate or reinvent the wheel. You just attack it where it matters and you just move along.
Alright, let's do a recap. In this module, I shared with you the kind of opportunities you can get once you know color correction. Then I shared with you the difference between color correction and color grading. I explained scopes to you in the simplest way possible. We looked at how to properly balance your image. And then we dove deep to understand all the different tools we have to control our exposure. I shared my tips and tricks on analyzing the footage before you get into color correction. Then I demonstrated what a lookbook is and how to create one. Then we deep dove into our first category, people, where we learn how to work with different skin tones under different lighting conditions. Then I showed you how to color correct landscapes with or without people. And then I shared with you what to and not to do when you're working with products. And finally, I shared my color correction process while working with Rec 709 footage. We've covered a ton in this module, and I will highly recommend to revisit, take your time, let it sink in before you move on to the next module. I'm going to conclude this entire module by 3 points. Color correction is not easy. You guys just saw what we had to do and how involved it gets. So I would say do not overlook it. Number 2, it's the main source of income for many. You're going to be working on promos, reality TV, regional spots, documentaries, corporate travel, and wedding videos. And number 3, the skills that you pick up here are essential to color grading. So here's what I recommend. Number 1, keep it simple. Don't overcomplicate it. Look at the problem. That's why the analyze phase of this module was so important, because once you have analyzed the shot and you know what it needs, just do that. The thing about color correction is that it's a very time sensitive thing, and most of the time you need to turn and burn. So efficiency is key. Going through 600, 700, 800 shots in a day is sort of a regular thing when you're a colorist and doing color correction. And guys, just remember, like, have a method to your madness. Complicated node trees are not cute. They're not impressive. And a lot of the times I've jumped on projects and I looked at it and I was like, what the hell is this? That's like, in editing terms, think of like a timeline that has 67 video tracks. I mean, what the hell is that about? Like, there's no movie out there that's being edited like this. So that is not impressive. It gives away that you're an amateur. It goes back to the whole keep it simple thing and just do what's required. One of the most underrated tools, people just think that primaries are kind of lame because that's the first thing that they see. So they get into their curves and create all these points and try to, overcomplicate things for themselves. This is the only way to keep your image pristine. You got to use primaries. You saw what I was able to do with primaries. You can full on in one node create looks, just using primaries and nothing else, no windows, nothing. So just keep that in mind. Start using primaries and exhaust it. Get it to a point where you can't use primaries anymore, and that's when you move on to all the other tools. I hope you guys were able to get some gold out of it. Guys, I cannot stress enough on what color correction means in the world of color grading and to a colorist. This is what's gonna make you profitable, and I hope, without being annoying, I got through to you guys of the importance of color correction. And now just go out there, and you know what I'm gonna say next: blow up. All right guys, here's the thing. So my exercises are not like academic exercises, okay? I like to keep things practical. So this is what I recommend. Go through all the timelines in this module and color correct it once. When you're done, do it all over again. When you're done, do it again. Do this 3 times, start to finish. Do not color correct the same shot 3 times back to back. This is not how it works. The whole point of this game is to color correct the entire timeline or all the timelines, and then when you're gonna revisit the first shot, you're literally gonna be shocked, and you're gonna go, what the hell was I thinking? And you're gonna come up with something cool, and then keep doing that and just add versions. Don't overwrite it. Add versions each time, so then you can flip through those versions and see how far you've come. And I promise you, it'll blow your mind. And then the next thing that I would say is, whatever you're learning from this, you just have to apply it right away. You have to apply it right away. The combination is like, you know, learn and apply, like learn and apply, learn and apply. Like these things need to go hand in hand. So I'll say, pull up your footage, whatever you got, or just go out there and shoot something, whatever you have, or just go shoot something, bring it back, and then apply these techniques. Don't just work with my footage, work on yours too, and then don't get discouraged. If you work on your stuff and it doesn't look as good as the footage that I've provided you, it's not a big deal. Keep going, keep going. Don't be disheartened, just keep pushing it until it looks as good as the stuff that you're provided with. And I promise you it will. And then the icing on the cake is that now we have a Facebook group just for all the FCM members, and I am just so excited. You can always share your work in there and we can just talk about it. I like to keep it 150% positive. I do not give a F about critiques. We're gonna just look at it and we're gonna say things like, this is awesome, maybe bring down the saturation a little bit, do this and do that, but this is how we're gonna drive it. We're not in the business of crushing souls, and you guys know this about me. And this is the culture that everybody is a part of now. So guys, this is it for color correction module 3. I will see you guys next week with shot matching.